Hello and welcome to MotorMotion E-Series. It's 2024 and our first broadcast of this year happens to just be the Trak Racer TCR Cup. We're back for Season 3 and looking forward to this very, very much. It's going to be an 8-round season, 8 weeks of racing in these TCR class cars, and we have a similar format to Season 2, but we do have a one-make series this time out. It's going to be in the Mazda 3 Group 4 cars, and that's going to create some very close, very tight, and very interesting strategic racing throughout this entire season. We've got returning teams. We've got teams that are brand new, drivers that are making their debut, and a lot of returning champions as well to the field, which is going to be a great sign of things ahead. Very much looking forward to that, and we're back in the commentary box, in this lovely decked out commentary box here in the beautiful part of the country of England, and it is Brands Hatch for round 1 of Season 3. This is a stunning track. It's got lots and lots of history. We're going to talk about that very, very soon, but before then, we're going to begin by introducing the lovely commentary team back once again, here for Season 1, here for Season 2, and the triple header, the trifecta, so to speak, is indeed returning. So let's go and introduce ourselves. So, of course, my name is George Cooke, and I am back hosting your races here at the TCR Trak Racer Cup. But the legendary man in Nick Pautasso is going to join me in the commentary box, and we're going to have our pit lane reporter as well, Andrew Scott, bringing us all the analytics and special interest facts from the pit lane. But first of all, Nick, welcome back to TCR Cup, mate. It's a pleasure to be sitting beside you in the commentary box once again.
Good evening, good afternoon, good morning, wherever you're watching us here at the Trak Racer TCR Cup, presented to you by MotorMotions. George, I mean, it feels like it's been an eternity since I last joined you in the commentary box last season for Season 2 of the TCR Cup. What a race, what a season that was. Great racing all round, and you know what? You throw in one-make series in any forms of racing, it always provides chaos, strategic masterclasses, and potentially can produce some new race victors throughout its entirety of this campaign. So I'm very excited to bring out these Mazda Group 4s. We saw these cars introduced in the Gran Turismo 7 update 1.38, really introduced as a Sprint Cup. GT Cup back at Fuji Speedway for the online users before it got sent out to the public, to our Gran Turismo public audience. Great cars to drive, good fun, and I'm expecting some very close racing amongst our competitors here.
Certainly will be. And of course, welcome in to Andrew Scott as well. He's joining us from the pit lane here at Brands Hatch. How's it going down there, mate? Looks like a sunny day out in the pit lane.
Yeah, good, mate. The beers are flowing, and yeah, g'day George, g'day Nick. I'm very privileged to be back. Thanks for having me back, and I'm really looking forward to this series and how it plays out. There's some newcomers and obviously a new car as well, so it'll be really interesting to see who masters this Mazda 3 the quickest and who gets on top of strategy and technique in order to get those cars to the finish line, to the checkered flag as soon as possible. So yeah, I'm really excited, ready to go.
Brilliant, and we are looking forward to seeing your insights from the pit lane as well. So let's talk about today's race. It is round 1, and we do have 8 races this season. We've got 3 legs of racing to go through: our European leg, the Americas leg, and then we're over to Oceania to finish off the season. But it will be Brands Hatch round 1, Circuit Spa de Francorchamps for round 2, Nürburgring GP course for round 3. Then we head over to the American leg for Laguna Seca, Watkins Glen, a personal favourite of mine, I might add, Daytona Raid course for round 6. So round 7 is going to be Bathurst, and finishing the season off at Suzuka Circuit. And what a calendar that is, I have to admit. But Nick, let's talk Brands Hatch. 31 laps around here today. It's late morning for Lobby 1 and Lobby 2. We'll talk format in just a minute as well. But TCR Cup at Brands Hatch, that's exciting.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, if you watch yourself in the real world and you watch yourselves on those YouTube videos, you see a lot of track cars, you know, jumping on the beautiful Brands Hatch. It's a great circuit, actually, mind you. You know, it's perfect for these hatchbacks that we have provided to us by Gran Turismo 7. Fantastic track work. The marshals have been keeping it in tip-top conditions, and the grass has been mowed to perfection. The gravel traps has been set in, been filled up to the brim. and we are very excited. So it's going to be very narrow. The drivers are going to be countering a lot of mid-corner understeer if they get on the power too early, so there's not really much room for runoff there, George. Obviously, you start playing that power down a little bit too much. There's either going to be a slippery grass. It's very moist, the grass, but it's very slippery out there, so drivers do have to be careful. Brands Hatch is definitely one of my favourite tracks in the country of England. I'm very excited. Unfortunately, obviously myself not racing there, but I have been cutting a few cheeky hot laps, 1 or 2 hot laps in a certain Mazda Group 4. Obviously more news to come very shortly, but it has been some good fun, and it's a great track for our drivers to get to hone in their craft, their racecraft.
Absolutely. I was fortunate enough to be able to go and do a quote-unquote hot lap out in one of the Mazda 3s. They are a lot of fun, but those front tires are going to cause problems, as they always do. That is part of the fun of the TCR standard and the category that we're in at the moment. So all racing tires, of course, permitted today, but the soft tires are going to be mandatory, so you need to make sure you do that stint. It's from somewhere between 7 and 10 laps, or 7 and 12 laps, depending on how much you use those front tires. Tuning, of course, is prohibited across the entire series, but brake bias is allowed. So that is going to be a little extra tool for all the drivers and teams to add into their strategy and use appropriately out on the track. So, talking about Brands Hatch, well, it is a 2.4 mile track, 3.9 kilometers with only 9 turns. 1 minute 12 was the fastest lap there by Adam Carroll in the A1 GP for Ferrari in 2009. That is very, very quick. Of course, it is the full course layout here in Kent. And corners of note, let's be honest, Druids, Surtees, you've got Sheen as well. Very important to get those corners right. And then, of course, Clark Curve onto the Brabham Straight into Paddock Hill Bend, that whole complex. And it really does allude to the fact that this entire 2.9 kilometer circuit is a really tricky one to get absolutely right. Small mistakes are going to create big issues out on track today.
Oh, definitely right there. You're definitely going to be hearing a lot of that front left side of the car really screeching itself, praying to get themselves back into the pit lane as quickly as possible. So it's all about those that can manage those tires on that left-hand side, because like you mentioned, turns 5, turn 6, turn 7, all the way up to you're going to about Druids, except for Sterlings, you're pretty much turning right the whole time. So that left side of that car is going to cop an absolute battering for our drivers here tonight. So they really have to take advantage of really nursing those tires and trying to make at least half race distance on that set of compounds if we see some strategies evolving with the soft softs being a potential option, but as well we could be seeing someone not so confident like myself on the DS4. Maybe I might be throwing on some mediums and then a soft tire at the end there. So who knows? We will find out, but that's when our pit lane reporter Andrew Scott will let us know on who is coming in and who can let us know what the strategy is.
Exactly right. And so let's talk format very quickly, because there is a very specific format with how the TCR Cup now runs. In Season 1, we had Division 1, Division 2, but in Season 2, we changed to a Lobby 1, Lobby 2 configuration with no divisions. So we do have 14 teams, 28 drivers out there. Each of the drivers, so 2 drivers per team, will be driving in the same lobby, and the teams will rotate between Lobby 1 and Lobby 2 for each race. And what that means is that every single team and every single driver will have an opportunity to race everyone else at some point throughout the season. So bear no attention to Lobby 1 being Division 1. That's not the case. Lobby 1 is just the group of teams that have been linked to that lobby for this particular round, and we will see that change up over time. So we can look forward to the top teams that evolve in each lobby eventually getting into the same lobby, which will be extremely exciting to see, because that'll create some even better racing. So it is now time for us to go and sort out ourselves to get out on track. The cars are out there. Qualifying results have come in now, and we will be going through that. So Nick, please take us through Lobby 1 qualifying results.
Absolutely. So some great running there in these brand new Mazda Group 4s. We have here at the beautiful sunny conditions here at Brands Hatch, and it's always going to be a familiar face on the front row here tonight. We have Lewis Atkinson taking out Season 3's first pole position for Hoon Corp Esports, making their return in the Trak Racer TCR Cup after a very strong season last time out. Unfortunately, hampered a little bit by attendance, so we didn't get too many battles there with little Lewis Atkinson and a few of the drivers up at the front in Season 2. And of course, the man that leads the team in me, Cougar Drive, here at Trak Racer TCR Cup, Luke Stone for Lightning Motorsport. Now, this is Troy Britnell's baby team in Lightning Motorsport, so he's managed to hire someone very strong and very capable of getting victories, and he's got himself up into that third position on the front row, on that second row, which is absolutely amazing. And we also have Rob Jacobs for Hoon Corp Esports. So it's the Hoon Corps 1 and 4. Great start for those boys making their return here at MotorMotions. Then in 5th place, the man that leads Juiced Motorsport, Matthew Joynson, rounds up the 3rd row of the grid alongside the returning of Mick Hill, the Season 1 Division 2 champion and back-to-back teams champion, and me, Cougar Driver Development alongside Andrew Scott. So look out for me, Cougar, to go for a 3-peat, but there are some big names and there are some big teams coming through in this season. And then we have in 7th place Boris Blazinic for WAR. So I'm just trying to pull up what that name was. It is actually Wick.
Yes, one. Yep.
There we go. So a brand new team. So very unfamiliar with myself. So I've not seen Wicked Awesome Racing. So, and they've pretty much what they've done is they've actually signed a very strong driver in Boris Blazinic in Budsy 76. Very strong, very capable hands in piloting a car around a track like this. He's very strong around Brands Hatch. And then in 8th place, we have Dean Vandersest for CP Motorsports, rounding up our top 8 in the 4th row of the grid. Mitch Collin pilots his team forwards for Collin Racing Team alongside his new teammates. Not the teammate that we saw last time, which was Mark Pacheco. We'll talk through that very shortly in the next lobby. But we have Chris Patajak for Collin Racing Team. So CRT rounding up the 5th row of the grid. Brent Allen for Wicked Awesome Racing, a new name as well, joining us here at Trak Racer TCR Cup. It's very exciting to see some new faces here, gentlemen. And as well, we have Troy Britnell rounding up the team boss in Lightning Motorsport in 12th, and then Matthew Hatton, who's had a couple of appearances for ISA Esports, is now linked himself up for a permanent role in Juiced Motorsports, the pilot alongside Matthew Joynson. And then unfortunately, the one driver that we are missing today is Dave Chucky in CP Motorsports. But the big name here is, gentlemen, there is no Dan Wood here to defend his title. So with CP Motorsports and Dan Wood parting ways at the end of this season, we're going to probably be able to crown ourselves a brand new champion. So this is the first time we don't have a defending champion, obviously, since we saw Andrew Scott defending his title in Season 2.
Exactly right. It's going to be very interesting without Wood there, but at the same time, maybe he'll make a return in future seasons, maybe looking for another team to get signed up with. We won't unfortunately see how Chucky is able to perform in a lobby like this until next round at Spa, so we will have to wait and see. Some familiar names in there, as you mentioned, and yeah, we'll talk about Mark Pacheco in Lobby 2, because that's definitely going to be an interesting and evolving story. But I'm hearing from the race directors that we are ready to go out on track. So I think, gentlemen, it is now time to begin the race and see those lights go out on circuit. So let's get this lobby going for the first round of Season 3 at Brands Hatch. It is Lobby 1 coming up for your viewing pleasure right now. Let's go out on track and see what's happening. 3 lights, 4 lights, 5 lights are on, and we're about to go racing here for Season 3. There we go. It's the first moments, the first meters captured off the line. A decent start for Lewis Atkinson. Andrew Scott getting a little bit under pressure from Luke Stone. They're fighting. Luke Stone's up the inside at the first corner for Paddock Hill. This is going to be his run, maybe. And there's Matthew Joynson up the inside into Druids. 3 wide. There's a touch. Unfortunately, a big touch, in fact. Andrew Scott has been run very, very wide, and Mick Hill will also try and come through on his team owner. Doesn't work out though for him. Matthew Joynson though, from 4th position up to 2nd in the same number of corners, and Luke Stone does fall back to 3rd place, got caught up in that 3 wide at Druids as well. Now we're going to go onto Pilgrim's Drop for the first time on the first lap. 31 laps ahead of us at the moment. Luke Stone behind. Then we've got Rob Jacobs in the Hoon Corp Esports 744 car in 4th place, and Andrew Scott under even more pressure right now. He's got Boris Blazinic right on his heels. Does back out of it. luckily, though, through Hawthorne, that's what you've got to do. Single file through there. There is a very optimistic car in the background, a CP Motorsports car going very, very wide around the outside. Does manage to get the move done ahead of both of the Colin Motorsports racing team. That is an impressive move there on lap 1. Very optimistic, but these Group 4 cars, they are wily little beasts, and they do have a lot of grip when you do have good tyres, and that is the situation we're in right now. But Andrew Scott dropping down into 5th place. Lewis Atkinson running away with things at the moment, followed by Boris Blaznik in P7, Mick Hill in P6, sorry for Blaznik, Mick Hill in P7, Dean van der Zart is in P8. Then we've got the Colin Racing Team cars here in P9 and P10. Number 11, there we go for Wall Racing, I think it is. I'll double check that in just a moment. And then P13 and P is Troy Britnell at the moment, but Lewis Atkinson got pole position and is running away with things at the moment. A little bit of a gap there back to Matthew Joynson, who's going to be fighting with Luke Stone as we enter the second lap.
Yeah, very good call there, George. To give you a little bit of a breath time there. But unfortunately there, the biggest loser from all of that was Andrew Scott. Starting from P2, got caught up in all of that kerfuffle going into Paddock Hill and then through Druids. He got caught up in a 3 wide moment at turn 2. So he actually got compromised there by Joynson going for a really ambitious inside move there, all well within his rights to go for the inside line, but Andrew was a little bit squeezed there on the pitch of the apex there, so he dropped down to 5th place, losing 3 positions there, but a huge gain for Matthew Joynson for Juiced Motorsports in the 777, so he's going to be setting his sights to try and see if he can close that gap down to Lewis Atkinson. But Lewis Atkinson at the end of Druids, he already pulled that gap to well over 7 tenths, 8 tenths going on to Pilgrim's Drop on that first lap, and he's ever so slightly extending that just that little bit more. As these cars are starting to settle in, the drivers are starting to get familiar with the balance of these cars as we're at lap 2 of 31, so the fuel mixture is starting to flow through, the tyres are starting to heat up, and the drivers are red hot and ready to go, with Luke Stone in 3rd place, Rob Jacobs rounding up the top 4, so a nice little battle pack for 2nd place, Andrew Scott holding up another pack down in 5th place ahead of Boris Blaznik, and then we have Mick Hill, who's pressurizing the man from Wicked Awesome Racing in 6th place. And then we had, as we saw a moment there on lap 1, Dean Vanderson and the 2 Colin Racing Team boys going 3 wide, going through Westfield, and that was absolutely ambitious there. And you cannot fit 3 cars there. If we can go to a track like St. Croix, surely you can fit 5 cars on a straight there. But here, 3 cars? I don't think so. And that was a very smart move by the CRT boys, and they're following single file in 9th and 10th place.
Exactly right, yeah. 3 wide does not work at any part of the circuit. Maybe just a little bit down Pilgrim's Drop where we're at now, but to be fair, it's really only 2 cars wide. Otherwise, someone is going to be slightly on the grass, and you don't want to be doing that because you're going to be roughing up those tyres, giving yourself almost no grip, especially if you drop your left-hand tyres onto the grass. You do need those quite significantly in most of the bends, especially in Sector 2 and Sector 3. Extremely important to manage that well, and if you don't, then yeah, you're going to find yourself in all sorts of trouble. Luckily, these Mazda 3 Group 4 cars, very, very sturdy. You know, they are good bits of machinery. A little bit of a look there for Luke Stone around the outside. Matthew Joynson defending very, very well against Luke Stone and Rob Jacobs. He is definitely holding them up at the moment. There may be a little bit of a tyre difference. Is Luke Stone going to go for the inside move? Nearly does. Have to drop a tyre or 2 onto the inside grass at the final corner of Clark Curve and can't get it done there. It's going to compromise him slightly, and Rob Jacobs will be now able to have a little look potentially. If he gets a good run through into Druids, this could be a potential for overtake on Stone, but no, it's a great entry there. Well done from Luke Stone, defending well and going back on the attack to see what he can do to the Juiced Motorsport car just ahead of him. Strategies, there could be something a mix up here. We could have some starting on the softs, some starting on the mediums, some using fuel as much as they can at the start, and some potentially saving fuel at the start as well. I don't know if we've really seen enough out on track just yet to make that determination. Everything from P2 backwards seems to be relatively close at this point.
Oh, there's an accident that's happened at the back end of the circuit there, down at the exit of Graham Hill Bend. There's one of the drivers there, that is Matthew Hatton. Unfortunately, he's got caught up in an incident, potentially an inside move made by somebody, and unfortunately must have just pushed him off there, so we didn't catch that, unfortunately. So for him, he's down the pack there in 13th place, ahead or just behind Brett Allen in Soul Slayer 71. So very unfortunate there to happen on lap 4 of 31, but it's still a long race. He's down at the back of the field, while we have Lewis Atkinson heading the way up in 1st place. But like you said there, and what I was very fascinated with, the cars exiting Graham Hill going into Surtees, that whole line of cars from Matthew Joynson all the way down to potentially, I don't know, was it 12th place or something? As we see a potential move here for Stone, he sticks a nose in, he's making Joinson think about it, and he's going to take that inside line going to Paddock Hill Bend. Now, this is the big part of going into turn 1. Can you tuck yourself back into that rear wing, or is Jacobs going to have a look to try and go for an inside and take advantage of this? No, he doesn't actually, so very hesitant there for the Hoon Corp Esports, but he's going to think about a move. Going into Druids, he thinks about it, Joinson defends, but Joinson's back on the attack against Luke Stone here. The two drivers between Lightning Motorsport and Juice Motorsports. The Lightning Motorsports driver in Luke prevails ahead of Joinson. Great racing there, but as I was saying, the cars between now in P2 in Stone, potentially all the way down to P10, these guys are separated within about 2.5 seconds, 3 seconds. It's absolutely incredible. This is what I love about TCR racing, the close racing and the great racing that we see here amongst our drivers.
Absolutely. I mean, we saw some good racing, of course, last season with the 5-make series, but, you know, there's something about a 1-make series that just really closes the pack up, and it really comes down to how you're driving the car. Even that little extra bit, as opposed to maybe some reliance or some disadvantages being gained as per the characteristics of the car. This time it's the same characteristics, the same car, same situation, and it's all going to come down to who can drive it the best, who can preserve those tyres the most. But yeah, Troy Brunel will be looking up the field and going, yep, well done, Luke Stone, that is an excellent move, and I'm very happy that my hired teammate is up there. However, he's gone defensive though. We're on board with Andrew Scott right now, going defensive against Rob Jacobs, Matthew Joinson, who's now also gone defensive against Rob Jacobs. So Jacobs looking for an inside move into Paddock Hill Bend, and he might be able to do it. No, tries to get back into the slipstream. This is one of the things about overtaking. You don't want to compromise yourself too much, especially when there's a driver right behind you, and that is the case for all of them right now. Luke Stone just needs to look ahead, use that clean air, and go for it. But Andrew, really nice into the braking zone at the minute, and finding a little bit of time, looking very, very wide in the rearview mirror of Rob Jacobs, who's got to worry about quite a few things on track right now. He's got a very fast contender behind him. He's got Black Friday, that's Matthew Joinson in front of him, and a lot of different racing lines being taken there through Surtees, and it's going to compromise. Oh, it's going to compromise Matthew Joinson, but there's Rob Jacobs compromising himself on the outside. Andrew Scott might be in for a move here, Nick.
Yeah, he's tucked underneath that rear wing. It's going to be very hard to go for a move on the outside there. It's basically technically impossible, but it's not impossible to do, as he gets compromised on the inside, gets pinched on that inside. Ando takes the inside line going into Westfield and makes the move stiff for car 787, bided his time and moves his way back up into P4, 2 positions down from his starting position there. But Jacobs got really hurt there on the exit of Surtees, just clipping that grass, getting a little bit of opposite lock there. Very interesting to get opposite lock in these cars. I always thought it was impossible to get opposite lock, but he's proven me wrong there. So unfortunately for Jacobs, drops down to P5 and up into P4. And as we start to bring in our pit lane reporter in Andrew Scott, Ando, what can you tell us about some of our strategies that our drivers are going through? Because we can see a lot of different varying strategies. Some looks like they might be on a softer compound. Maybe some are just preserving tyres, maybe saving a bit of fuel amongst our field there. We can see an even spread from the back end. So what are we seeing different amongst our drivers here compared to Season 2?
Well, thanks, Nick. Yeah, I can tell you right now that all cars are on the same compound of tyre. So they're all on an even playing field there, but there are already some differences in tyre wear starting to become apparent, and also some differences in fuel state. So the refuel rate is a little bit slow here. Fuel is expensive in this series, so it's setting up nicely for some action to happen during the pit stops.
Yeah, it's just more expensive than my roast chicken that I get at my local Coles. So unfortunately for that, it's going to be a bit of a struggle for some of our drivers if they are really using that fuel to really close up the gaps there. But as we see, you know, those cars in that mid-pack there, they're saving a bit of fuel, obviously, with the likes of Mick Hill, who's actually been sitting behind Blazinic in 6th place. He's actually looks like he might be saving a bit of fuel there. But saying that, Boris looks like he's made a mistake at the exit of Sterling's. This might give Mick Hill a chance to go for an inside. Contact made. Oh, I think his nose was shown there a little bit by Mick Hill. Maybe he just misjudged the brakes, or Boris didn't actually see his car coming through. Unfortunate for him, but they're losing time to the man in 5th place in Rob Jacobs in 5th place. But as I just saw ahead there between Jacobs and Scott, they were actually having a nice little battle for 4th place. So Jacobs is not flustered at all by the defending teams champion in Cooke Driver Development, and also the Season 1 champion, a Division 1 champion in Andrew Scott. So he wants to put up a fight to say, hey, I'm here, even though I had a great run last time out in the Porsche Cup, in our off-broadcast Porsche Cup at MotorMotion E Series. I won my division. I'm here to play, and I'm challenging you, Ando Scott.
And I'll tell you what, Black Friday's looking good on fuel and tyres. I'd be watching out for him in this race. He is looking on point right now with his strategy.
Yeah, Matthew Joynson is a very competent fellow in all cars that he does do practice with, which is almost all of them. And he's been driving for Juice Motorsport for a long time now, as a regular contender with them. Absolutely loves to be involved with the Juice Motorsport team. And yeah, Black Friday, if he's got good fuel and tyres at the moment, he's in a potential place, but that is a big mistake on the exit of Sheen Curve. And looks like there's a little bit of contact maybe between Andrew Scott, who looked up the inside just that little bit. Matthew Joynson did close that door rather abruptly in the face, and now too wide between Andrew Scott and Rob Jacobs. A very close bit of racing there. Matthew Joynson holding on by the skin of his teeth through that one. It's a scary area to be going side by side with another car. We did see with the Boris incident, I did feel like Boris was you know, maybe a little bit unawares of what was going on. Mick Hill had a good run. Of course, both of them did run on the grass, but Mick Hill did get up alongside, so was probably entitled to just a little bit more space on the inside there. Nonetheless, we continue with the race. Luke Stone moving forward in P2 as he heads out there towards Lewis Atkinson, trying to make up. So for a bit of lost time, sitting behind a number of drivers early on, Matthew Joynson does appear to be a little bit of a bottleneck. That could explain why he's got better fuel and tyres at the moment, not pushing quite as hard on the tyres or on the pedal as some of the others around there. And of course, this is a track where overtaking is not only dangerous, but could potentially cost you a lot of time out on track. So he's definitely creating a little bit of a bottleneck for these top 5 right now, and Andrew Scott will be looking to find his way past as soon as he possibly can. Rob Jacobs then will begin the charge after Matthew Joynson once again, but you've got to not count out the likes of Boris Blazenik and Mick Hill. Still battling a little bit, so it's costing them some time in the race to get back towards the top 5, and that is a car in the wall. Yes, it is. That is Dean van der Zant, and he has gone straight off into the barrier. Huge high G accident right there for the 132 car for CP Motorsports. What on earth has happened to him there?
And I just heard it was a tyre blowout on that left-hand side. So he must. So as I said early in the broadcast, it's all about preserving those front left tyres and really trying to take advantage of it. And he just went spearing into the wall at 150 kilometers an hour. That was absolutely fast there. No brakes. Nothing happens. Unfortunately, the tyre blowout on his end, and unfortunately that's ruined his race. And as we see there, Ando Scott has made his move go for an undercut. He must have got the call from his team members saying they saw a blowout on the CP Motorsports Mazda Group 4, and they're not taking any risk whatsoever. So wise move there from the wily old fox in Andrew Scott, and coming in for an undercut there. But huge disaster for Dean van der Zant and for CP Motorsports.
That is massive, and we are hearing from the pit lane that he is okay. He is out of the car, and he's being escorted back to the stadium. So really good to see that Dean van der Zant is okay and not having sustained any injuries other than the car. That car will be under a lot of repairs. They've got a week, of course, to get the thing back into working shape. But man, that was a huge accident there for him, and they'll be absolutely gutted at CP Motorsports for that first round to have a tyre blowout like that. It is lap 10. We did say that there's a tyre life here of somewhere between 7 and 12, but not in terms of the tyre actually blowing up. So I think our tyre provider may have a few questions to answer after this race.
Yeah, absolutely. So very unfortunate there. It reminds me back to the 2012 of the Formula One Championship with their Pirelli tyres blowing out through at Silverstone every few laps towards the end of it. We saw a lot of drivers. There we go. So thanks for the call there, Ando. We do see Lewis Atkinson. He's actually looks like he's actually copied what Ando Scott's doing. So he thinks there is more pressure coming from the man in 787 than there is in Luke Stone. So he's going to be watching out for that Mick Cougar. And he's actually come through. So a huge jump there for Ando Scott, all the way down from 4th place. He's still in 4th place, but the big thing is he's ahead of Lewis Atkinson, who looks like he has taken on fuel. Maybe the 787 didn't take fuel. Maybe just throw on some tyres and go for a full send for this next stint. Obviously, we'll come to our pit lane reporter very shortly once all the pit stops have cycled through. But we have a new leader on lap 11 of 31 with 21 laps to go. It is Luke Stone ahead of Rob Jacobs, ahead of Boris Blazinic in that top three. But the first of the pit stoppers, Andrew Scott, leads the way in 4th place.
Yeah, exactly right, and that means that Matthew Joynton now elevated up into P2 spot with Mick Hill now in P3 as well. So it looks like the Cooke driver development team have coordinated on their strategy here and have both managed to jump up a number of positions. So looks like there was fuel taken in by Lewis Atkinson, and that maybe is what helped to launch the Cooke cars past. So again, we'll come to our pit lane reporter in just a minute. Top 3 still yet to pit. And that does put Lewis Atkinson technically down into P4 in this race. And that is a big change up for Hooncorp Esports. Maybe they've got another alternative strategy on there. Let's throw it down to our pit lane reporter. Some analysis, please, as we do see Luke Stone now coming into the pits for his first mandatory pit stop, as well as Rob Jacobs.
Yeah, it looks like the undercut is working beautifully for the Cooke team because you've got some very slow in-laps from these leaders right now. So it wouldn't surprise me one bit whatsoever to see a Cooke in the lead after these pit stops are finished.
And now you say that, we do have the 787 that is actually now officially leading the race on lap 12 of 31, ahead of Matthew Joynton, ahead of disposable hero Mick Hill. So a top 3 for Cooke driver development, showing why they are a class above in this TCR championship, wrapping up back-to-back teams champions in season 1 in the Audi TT and season 2 in the Volkswagen Scirocco. Great to see now these cars decked out their Cooke's sporting colours on the Mazda 3 Group 4 cars. And yeah, as you said there, it looked like, obviously, we saw a few drivers come in and take on a bit of a fuel stop there, Ando. Was there anybody else that just threw on some tyres and just said, you know what, I've got plenty of tank in the fuel, I'm just going to go for it?
Yeah, funnily enough, Black Friday, or Matthew Joynton, also was able to not require fuel. So he's gotten the memo and realised that a bit of fuel saving will pay dividends here. So he's now enjoying 2nd place outright, and Disposable as well did not need fuel. But the other drivers had slow in laps and they needed fuel. So they've paid a steep price for that.
Oh, damn. Okay. Very interesting there, because yeah, I would have assumed that they would have gone to about lap 15, lap 16 on a set of tires and maybe fuel tank down to the end. But obviously the wear on these Mazdas are a little bit faster compared to what we saw in our 5-make series last time out in season 2. Looks like the tire wear on the front end of that car looks like it's degrading a little bit quicker compared to our seasons previously.
Yeah, it is atrocious, and the funny thing about this circuit is that pit stop is quite short, so the 2 stoppers could be the way to go today.
Yeah, I did see some discussion amongst team owners and drivers that the 2-stop was doable, but was fundamentally potentially going to be rather slow in comparison to the 2-stopper. So the 2-stopper, maybe a medium stint out there if you wanted to, but depends on how far you can get those tires. If you can get 10 laps out of them, well, there's your soft stint right there. Soft stint, I should say. If not, then you're going to maybe have to think about the medium tire, and the teams will be thinking about that in the garage, as we did have the blowout of the soft tire on the CP Motorsports car. Given all of this, it does look like the fuel-saving strategy is the way to go. That would make a little bit of sense for the most part, but alternative strategies, it means that potentially Lewis could make a bit of a return later on the race, refuel a little bit less in that 2nd pit stop, so we could see a bit of a comeback from Lewis Anderson later in this race. He's got no real traffic around him other than Mick Hill ahead, and looks like he's already on a real charge. But the question is Lewis Atkinson and maybe the likes of Luke Stone and Rob Jacobs, who seem to have done some refueling in the pits, are they pushing too hard in these cars early on?
Well, it kind of looks like they are. I would say that they've paid the penalty by putting in some fuel into their car compared to what we saw with the top 3, just throwing on some tires and going at the end there. But you have to look where Lewis is in contrast to Andrew Scott. He's about to approach Stewart's right now, and Andrew's about to approach Graham Hill. So it's probably, you could say, the gap between those two is roughly about 5.5 to 6 seconds. So, and a fuel stop and a tire stop, correct me if I'm wrong, Andrew, is about anywhere between 10 to 12 seconds for just tires only. And obviously you throw in fuel, you're probably going to be looking at about 30 plus seconds, especially with this fuel rate slowing down with these Mazdas.
Yeah, that's right. So Lewis does have the advantage now that he's got significantly more fuel on board than the cars around him. So his next pit stop is going to be a lot shorter than his
Yeah.
opponent. So we'll watch out for him to come back through the field, and he'll be challenging for the win, I'm sure.
Yeah, refueling
Absolutely,
rate
and
here is 3 litres a second, so it does take quite a while to put a bunch of fuel in. Even a small splash and dash can really cost you. And, you know, as long as you're stationary, well, you know, you've got to calculate the fact that you've got a pit entry and pit exit to do, as well as an out lap. So you're going to be losing time the more times you have to refuel. So ideally, if you're only refueling once in this race, and that might feed into, you know, the way that the two-stopper is working with the Coupe and Juiced Motorsport cars right now.
Absolutely, and I think, and unfortunately, what we're seeing down in 5th place, the biggest loser out of all of this is actually Luke Stone. In 5th place, this guy, he obviously made the move going, battling Johnson pretty hard in those opening few laps, and took position 2 away from the Juice Motorsports 777, and was actually closing up to the back end of Lewis Atkinson before that first sequence of pit stops. But he's so far back behind Lewis Atkinson at the moment. That looks to be about 7 seconds between the two drivers, and you have to look in comparison to where Johnson is at the moment. He's lost so much time, so he must have put on a heavy amount of fuel compared to everybody else, and probably more fuel compared to Lewis as well. So maybe going for a different strategy, that maybe thinking paying the penalty at this moment of time, putting more fuel on, and obviously a fresh set of boots. But I guess in a way, the positive I can see from Stone at this early stages of the race, as we're about to approach half race distance, he's got clear air, and he's able to use that clear air to run his own race, maybe save a little bit of fuel. So all he needs to do is that when he comes into the pit lane for one more pit stop, is he can start closing that gap to Lewis Atkinson, because that gap between Lewis and Luke is huge. It's a lot bigger than what it was in that first stint.
And he's just
Yeah,
gone
exactly
purple.
right. And I was about to say he's gone purple, and not just Sector 1, but Sector 2 and Sector 3, it looks like, as well. So he's in the final part of the course now. Let's see if he puts on a really good time. Yeah, he is indeed flying. This is Lightning Motorsport after all, so the speed of light is their ultimate velocity. Not quite at the point of the speed of light just yet, but this will be a very good lap. Across the line he's going to come, and is it going to be a 28? No, it's a 29.0, actually taken by Rob Jacobs. So Rob Jacobs in behind him, actually going faster out on track. Luke Stone wasn't going to take the fastest lap there, which was held by Andrew Scott for a while with a 29.1. But Rob Jacobs, wow, what a lap there. He is on a flyer.
Yeah, they are both flying, he and Stone, but they have more fuel on board. And that's why they're behind now, but they need it. The way they're driving the cars right now is they need that fuel, because they are revving the absolute guts out of these cars. And sure, that does extract pace, but what it does do is cost you more time in the pits, and it chews up the tyres. So it'll be very, very interesting to see how this race plays out now, with obviously distinctly different strategies at play.
Exactly right. Let's run through the back part of our field at the moment. Mitch Collin is in P7 at the moment for his team, Collin Racing. And then we've got Boris Blazanek for WAR and Wicked Awesome Racing, of course. Then Troy Britnell, who's actually made a really good few positions up. He was well down in the field in qualifying, started P13, and now has found himself up into P9. Of course, we have had one retirement already, so subtract one. But nonetheless, a very impressive run so far for Troy Britnell. Then, of course, we do have Matthew Hatton here, P10 currently, so he rounds out our top 10 as it is right now for Juiced Motorsport, I believe that is. Yes, it is. It's the red version of Juiced Motorsport, apparently.
He did do his first stint with damage too, so a good effort from him to claw back some spots and be in the top 10 right now.
Absolutely, and we do have to mention, of course, heavy damage is one of the settings here. So you do get damage, you're going to have to hold it until your next pit stop.
Yeah, absolutely. And then we have, rounding up in 11th place, we have the newcomer in Chris Padajak, the newest driver for Collin Racing Team. As we saw last time out, we saw Jeremy Crow and Mark Pacheco being teammates to Jeremy Crow for Collin Racing Team. Mitch Collin actually wasn't driving for his own team. He actually gave up his race seat for I believe it was Jeremy Crow, but at the same time he's decided to say, I want to take back my seat and he actually let go Mark Pacheco, and well, that's something that we'll see in Lobby 2 very at the conclusion of this race to see where he's ended up. So, but for what I've been hearing, that formidable duo of Mark Pacheco and Jeremy Crow's been running riots in that practice session before the second race is about to begin. So watch out for those guys in Lobby 2. So, but Pautasso doing a good job on his debut in 11th place, just still has a lot of time to get some test running with these Mazda Group 4s. And then we have at the back here, Brett Allen for WAR for Wicked Awesome Racing. So
Who's on the
that's
medium?
that's gonna be a great name to call throughout the season. Wicked Awesome Racing. That's so good. Happy for those guys, giving us an
Yeah.
awesome name to call.
Yeah, and he's on medium, so he might be doing the one-stopper. So it'll be interesting to see if he makes any positions up now between now and the end of the race.
Well, we can see by the times that he's setting, a 1:31 seems to be about the average for him at the moment. A couple of drops into the 1:30s as well, but definitely seems like he's a little slower out on track. No doubt on the mediums as well, so it's going to cost him a bit of pace, but looks pretty conservative on the driving as well, not looking like he's pushing the car too much. Has dropped some positions from the beginning of the race too, but I think
I'm
it
not
might
sure
be
he's got the
time.
fuel. He might be
We'll
in
have to
trouble on
see,
fuel.
yeah. Well, we're coming up towards 13 laps remaining, so based on what we saw in a flurry of pit activity between lap 9 and lap 11, so we are coming up to that window where people do need to come into the pits once again, so expect to see some more pit stops around lap 20 or 21, maybe a little bit sooner, maybe a little bit later. We will have a look and see. I think, though, before we go and do that, I think it'd be great if our pit lane reporter can run us through the tyres and approximate fuel levels for all the cars around the grid. We'll go through them one by one. Andrew Scott, over to you. So
Yeah, no problem. But if we just jump on board with P4 right now, HC Lewis, he's about to make a move on Hero.
Oh yeah, we did
Just,
see that. We did see that.
Yeah, well,
He's very close to coming up to that rear end of car number 3. He's closing that gap right up in there. He's gonna go feint the inside move, slams the brakes and goes to the inside move. Mick Hill does an ambitious move to try and hold around the outside, still given room there. Is he going to throw a bit of a dummy there? No, he doesn't. He still holds it around the outside. Mick Hill, unfortunately, has to concede that position to Lewis. That's a great move there by the Hugenkorb driver, very experienced in Group 4 machinery as well. So he's not his first rodeo in a Mazda Group 4. He's doing himself a really nice job in car 151. So that's P3 for Lewis. Unfortunately, that disposes, no pun intended, that disposes Mick Hill down to P4. And that's nice, some solid driving there, but a lot of work to do to catch up to Matthew Joinses. But yeah, now we go back to our pit reporter, Andrew Scott. So yeah, it'll be interesting to know what fuel level everyone is running. So let us know and see who's going to be good let us know who's going to be good to get to the end of the race on a short fuel tank.
Yeah, I'll start with P3 and P4 because Disposable Hero, he's done a great job as a back marker for me Cougar there, but Lewis got through purely because he's got much better tyres and he's got a bit more fuel as well. The Lewis is looking okay on fuel and tyres, but he's probably going to have to pit shortly. Black Friday ahead has got awesome tyres. He's got the best tyres of the bunch. He'll definitely be staying out for at least one more lap. And then Ando in the lead, he's flashing red on his fuel, and his tyres are just about spent as well. So I think he'll be pitting soon. I think this is going to be the in-lap for everyone, except maybe Lewis of the top runners who might be able to stay out for one more lap. But they're all pretty even for now.
all right, so let's look down the grid. Luke Stone, we'll start with him and we'll go down. Just a very quick update on each of the drivers from our pit lane reporter as we go down and head towards what's going to be the second stop for most of the drivers out on the grid.
So Stone is looking great on tyres and fuel, and he's making gains now on P3 and P4, so he might be able to stay out for one more lap. Jacobs has got a pretty much spent front left tyre, so he might have to pit this lap. His fuel's okay, so these drivers are going to save a bit of time in refueling against the cars ahead of them, but they are significantly down time-wise. We go back to Mitch Collin. He'll definitely be pitting this lap. His front left is looking a bit worse for wear. Isa Budsy, he will probably be in this lap, but he may not need to refuel. He looks like he's got fuel to the end, which is very interesting. And Brits Lightning is going to need to pit again for tyres and fuel. Matt Smacker's got a fully red left front tyre, so he is leaking oil big time right now. He's in the 133s. He'll definitely be in this lap as we see Ando in. And Mr. Sarte, I don't know what his actual name is, but he's got a fully red front left tyre as well. So the back markers definitely suffering with strategy and tyre wear, it looks like.
Brilliant. And one quick last one, Brett Allen at the back there, Soul Slayer. Quick update on him.
His mediums are looking good, but I'm really concerned for him on fuel. I think he's going to have to pit again just for fuel.
Righto. So we did see a few pit stops happening around the grid. Matthew Joynson in, Mitch Collin in on low fuel, so he'll have to refuel a fair bit. Andrew Scott in, of course, as well, and he's come out of the pits in P5, just going through Druids right now. Puts him back behind Jacob Stone, Mick Hill, and Lewis Atkinson. All four of them, of course, still to do a pit if they do need to. Lewis Atkinson provisionally elevated back up into the lead of this race with 10 laps to go, and a fastest lap again for Rob Jacobs, 28.988. The man is still flying, but as we've heard from our pit lane reporter, Jacobs, among others on the grid, gonna be back in the pits in reasonably short order. I'm really interested to see how things work out for Brent Allen on this attempted, what potentially we think is an attempted one-stop strategy, but with the concerns around his fuel level, I think his team in War is going to be considering pulling him back into the pits for a resupply.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think what we're seeing with car 787 is the key word, and is probably the key words of the day: clean air. Ando's got no one behind him. He's got no one in front of him. He's got a whole part of the track to himself. He's about to approach Sterling's, and everyone else goes through Sheen, through Clark Curve, and he's got so much clear air. But as we see all of our runners now into the pit lane for that last stop, Lewis, Disposable, Stone, and Jacobs all in the pit lane. Anders coming onto the pit straight right now and just jumps them all, says, see you later, I am out of here. My fresh set of softs, I'm going to go for the fastest lap right now. So as we go on board with Ando 787, turn up your volumes, ladies and gentlemen, for what is going to be a hot lap with the defending team's champion and driver in 787, Andrew Scott. Take it away, and car 787. So sit back and enjoy the sounds of this Mazda Group 4.
I've just got the future chapter said for a second. All right, and that was a very nice lap there from Andrew Scott, leading us away in P1 for Cooke driver development. At the moment, we do have a battle ensuing, though, behind here, and it was Black Friday and Lewis Atkinson going at it. Matthew Joynson, I think, did actually get out of the pits ahead of Lewis Atkinson. That position has now reversed itself once again, so Lewis Atkinson back up into P2, Matthew Joynson in P3, and then it's Mick Hill in P4. A little ways down the road, though, and you can see they're over a corner and a half behind Andrew Scott. So that gap has got to be well over 6 or 7 seconds at the moment back to Lewis Atkinson. Matthew Joynson might have something to say about this, but we do know that Lewis Atkinson is driving incredibly quickly with that foot right down on the throttle as much as he possibly can, revving out the car and pushing it to its limits. So whether Matthew Joynson can keep up with that kind of onslaught from the Hugenkorp driver, we will see. But at the moment, this does look like a provisional P2 and P3 on your screens right now. 23 laps through, everyone, so 8 laps to go before we see the results of what's been a fantastic race so far. So much strategy to talk about and think about, and a lot of alternate strategies, a mix of mediums and softs, a mix of twos and one stops out there. Not so much favored on the one stop, of course. We have seen mostly two stops out there today, but certainly the amount of fuel used, whether driving or refueling, seems to be a key sticking point with regards to strategy execution.
Yeah, absolutely, and we've seen that well demonstrated by those fuel stoppers that only only took tyres in that first stint, and then really just took advantage of putting in some fuel in that last one. So we saw Johnson just, as you said, briefly ahead of Lewis Atkinson, but he just got pipped there by Lewis only a couple of laps ago. And then obviously the biggest winner after what was the biggest loser in the first opening laps there was Ando Scott. He went down to as low as 5th place, and then with perfect strategies, got himself up into 1st place. And as we saw with that beautiful hot lap from the 787 Me Cougar Mazda 3, it just shows how class and finesse he's driving that car. Not much movement on the steering wheel, really just trying to keep those tyres quiet, as he's very well known as a tyre whisperer, and just really driving that car to an absolute perfection. And that's why he's in the lead of this race. And Lewis is not really able to capitalize at the moment. Obviously, leading the early stages in that first stint is pretty much about 4.5, 5 seconds behind Ando Scott. So very confusing at the moment there, just to see Lewis down there in P2. And I think even more so, as I brought to my points in that first stint, on that second stint, sorry, on the soft tyres, is Luke Stone in car 53 for Lightning Motorsport. Yes, he was very rapid. He was quickly catching Atkinson, but he's still down here in P5. He's nowhere near those guys ahead of him. So it's a very hard learning curve. Obviously, being your first time out, making your debut here at MotorMotion E Series in the Trak Racer TCR Cup, but obviously he'll take this as a learning curve, as a stepping stone. And who knows, maybe in the next few rounds, we might be seeing him jumping on the podium.
Yeah, I think we're going to have a lot of team owners and team engineers and drivers out there looking at what's been executed well and what's not been executed well amongst all the rest of the grid. And this is the first opportunity for everyone to really weigh up what their strategy execution is like compared to the other teams on the grid. And at the moment, I think the Hoon Corp guys will be getting their data sheets out, grabbing the Excel spreadsheets or whatever tool that they're using in this modern day era of motorsport, and having a little look, grabbing that Motec data, seeing what those other cars are doing out on track and where they can potentially improve. That's the mark of a good team, and every team and all the drivers will be doing exactly that. Luke Stone, yeah, have to tip my hats off to him on debut. Not easy to do. Rob Jacobs behind him, absolutely flying though. So Luke Stone, he's in P5 right now, but he might suddenly find himself under attack by another Hoon Corp Esports car. It's just in the background here, currently in P6. Fastest lap there of 28.681, which is absolutely rapid. We'll go through the grid and then we'll compare to the top times of the leaders and see what that is. That before though, 29.4, not great, and then suddenly set an absolute flyer. So a little bit up and down here for Jacobs.
Yeah, absolutely, and he's a young prospect that's coming through in the ranks here in the Gran Turismo 7 world. So he's really starting to find his feet now. Obviously competing in a couple of leagues throughout the week, especially racing in on a Sunday series here in our partner league at Trackstars Racing Series in the Division 3 Formula 3 Championship. So he's really finding his feet in the racing world now, getting into a lot of league racing, and it's great to see because he is a Division 2 champion in the off broadcasting of the Sterling Parts Porsche Carrera Cup that we had a few weeks ago. Oh, as we see, something has happened here to Mick Hill. As we go through, something has happened massively to Mick Hill. Did we hear a bit of a cough sputter there, or did he just make a mistake on that final corner? We'll cut through our we'll come to our pit reporter very shortly, but Mick Hill has gone from a potential P4 and consolidating some good points at Mick Cougar, drops down to P6. Ado, what can you tell us about Mick Hill?
Yeah, I think he's had a little whoopsie there on the last lap. He's carrying damage now. He's got front aero and front right suspension damage. So he's in big trouble now with Isa Budsey behind him. He could be about to lose another spot between now and the end of the race. So fingers crossed for him. But yeah, it looks like a little bit of a self-induced moment there for Mick Hill.
Ah, dear, oh dear, that's very unfortunate there for Car 3, the Season 1 Division 2 champion, and one of the key elements to this Me Cougar driver development team that has won back-to-back championships at MotorMotion's Trak Racer TCR Cup. Unfortunately, picking up damage, and like you said, getting into the clutches of Boris Blazenik in 7th place, so he's probably going to lose that position. He's got a good gap between himself and Mitch Collin down in 8th place, so if he loses out to Blazenik in 7th, it's not all going to be a bad loss for him. So they're still holding in some points for the team's championship, with Ando Scott leading the way in first, and obviously he might just have to throw up the white flag and maybe just drop down to P7.
Too
Bring
right.
it home,
And we will
Nick.
keep
Bring it home, mate.
There we go. We got some encouragement from a team owner of Mick Hill and the driver development team of Me Cougars.
Keep it together, bro. Keep it together.
Too right, too right. It's all good. And we've got a couple of team owners now in the commentary box here today. So I'm sure we'll see some bias emerging into the commentary as things go forward. But that is to be expected. We can't help it. We can't help it. But yes, this is going to create a bit of a problem here for Mick Hill. Carrying damage in these cars is not a lot of fun. They already do feel actually they're pretty good on turning for the most part, but when your tires start to run out, you're already losing a little bit of that grip, a little bit of that control on the car, and that means that with the damage, he is going to be absolutely feeling that. So it's all on Boris Blazenek here. He'll be trying to pull in a result, one of the better results for the Column Racing team so far. Obviously, it's round one, so there's no other reports, no other results to actually go on.
Wicked awesome racing is
Lewis is all over
team.
Black Friday.
It certainly is. And I get confused
that's
because I see the
Friday's
blue. You know what it is? It's the blue. That is what it is. There's too many familiar colours on the grid right here. But yeah, it is indeed the war team. So that'll be a result that they'll be keen for in the war team. And it's their first outing as well. So seeing a potential P6 in front of them, I think Boris Blazenek is going to be absolutely going for it.
Joinson is at P2.
Oh, yes, he is. Thanks for that, letting us know there. So Johnson actually has gone past Lewis to take P2 away from him. So it looks like there's been a bit of a mistake on Lewis's end, or maybe just got caught by surprise there. But Lewis is been demoted to P3. Johnson up into second place as we see Boris Blazenek looking to go for a move on Mick Hill. Mick Hill just runs it a little bit of a wider line. Boris thinks about it, but doesn't get through. So he's got plenty of time. He's got about 3 laps to go until the end of this race, so he's got time to try and get past that number 3 in Mick Hill, but we want to try and see if we can get ourselves back up towards the front there with Joinson in P2. He's actually pulling away a little bit. He's actually stretching his legs a little bit over the Hoon Corp driver, so this will be a huge confidence boost for Joinson to get himself one up on Lewis Atkinson, who is the off-season Sterling Parts Division 1 Porsche Carrera Cup champion, as we saw a few weeks ago. As we heard from a few weeks ago. If you haven't already, do like and subscribe us here at MotorMotion E-Series on our YouTube channel. Join our Facebook groups in the MotorMotion Paddock Pass, where you'll be getting all of the action, and check in on us on the news, WordPress, on our MotorMotionEseries.wordpress.com, where you can see all of our previous results and all of the action and keep yourselves up to date on the latest news, rumour and gossip that we have here for the Trak Racer TCR Cup. But Lewis is starting to put some pressure now, 1 minute 30 flat compared to Johnson's 1 minute 30.2, I believe that was on his previous lap. So very close times between those guys. Actually, no, 30 flat. So they're basically setting matching times there. So very, very even for the battle for P2 there. And this is going to draw a fantastic conclusion to the end of this Lobby 1, George.
It certainly will, and I think it'd be good just to hear a little bit of analysis down from the pit lane, because we did not see the overtake happen there from Matthew Joinson and Lewis Atkinson. From what I'm hearing, it does appear that was a bit of a slow line that Lewis had taken, and I wonder, is he suffering on fuel or tyres here in comparison to Matthew Joinson? We've known throughout the race that Matthew Joinson's been very good on his tyres, so is there something Lewis is suffering from here that is causing him to drop back a little bit in the field?
Yeah, you've hit the nail on the head there, George. It was a bit of a moment, a bit of an error from Lewis that allowed Black Friday to cruise past him down the ensuing straight. And now Black Friday's sitting there with track position, which we know is very important around Brands Hatch. He's got a little less fuel than Lewis, but he's got much better tyres. So I expect him to pull away now from Lewis, who is now going to struggle to get to the end of the race with the tyre wear that he's got.
Oh, this is what we love about TCR Cup, though, isn't it? It's those front tyres that get absolutely destroyed, and at the end of the race, we see all this commotion, all the drama. Who's saved more tyres? Who's saved less tyres? Who's got the right amount of fuel?
Throwing the car.
He's absolutely monstering it around. That's how you use mechanical grip right there. That is just using the suspension geometry to its absolute maximum. I think his engineers might have a few things to say to him in the pit lane after this.
I think he
you can see what he's doing.
Black Friday was going to pull away.
Absolutely. But you could say what he's doing. He's just basically filling the mirrors. That's what he's doing. He's filling those mirrors on the inside. He's just letting Matt know that he's here. He's here to play, even though he's got less fuel on board. worse tyres than Joinson. He is here to play, and he doesn't want to give that up, because you can see there that familiar colours of the white, black, red and blue of Hoon Corp Esports is right on the back of that rear wing of the blue and black Juiced Motorsports entry of Matthew Joinson. But we are coming up towards the end of this race. Lap 30 or 31, we can see Ando is coming up to the final corner of Clark Curve, about to start his final lap of this Trak Racer TCR Cup for Season 3 for Round 1 here at Brands Hatch Racecourse. With him leading in 787. Matthew Joinson is the battle pack we are looking at for position 2. Joinson versus Atkinson as they come onto the Brabham Straight for the last time. Let's see how he goes. So strap yourselves in, ladies and gentlemen. Will we see a late move by Lewis Atkinson, or can Joinson hold on for P2? What will be a very strong P2 there. Very different lines there going into Paddock Hill Bend. Can Lewis go for a full send at Druids? He's thought about it. He just can't get that car pulled up enough. He's just fending him off there a bit.
Yep, he's just doesn't have the grip. Black Friday's able to cover him off beautifully.
And he's driving
with his fresh tyres.
And he's driving, and he's holding him off very nicely there. So putting the car in the right position, just runs the car a bit wide, but taking that late apex there. To me, I think he's got it. I don't think we can't see throughout this whole back section here, George, all the way from Hawthorne down to Clark Curve. It's going to be very hard to get a move done. It's basically single file, and all you have to do is just hope for the guy to make a mistake in front.
Yeah, rule 1 in the defensive masterclass handbook is put the car on the apex and you will find yourself in a pretty decent position to hold off a car behind you. That's exactly what Black Friday's doing. He's just focusing on what the next corner is. You can nail the apexes. He did miss the apex at Paddock Hill. Lewis Atkinson looking a little bit closer here as we head towards Stirling's. That's a very wide line again from Matthew Joinson. So Lewis Atkinson might have the line, but he's got to run, but he's on the defensive line. Matthew Joinson around the outside of Clark Curve never really works unless you can pull off the switcheroo of the century. That is not the case. Andrew Scott has come across the line already. Black Friday is right there. Can't get a camera view of it. It's going to be Matthew Joinson who takes it. P2, and Lewis Atkinson will have to settle for P3. What a finish to the first round here. Luke Stone finishes P4 in this race after Mick Hill does drop down the field. Rob Jacobs, then is Boris Blaznik, making it up ahead into P6 of Mick Hill, carrying damage from an unforced error earlier in this race. The strategy executed well, but sadly putting the car into the barrier.
Yeah, very unlucky there for Mick Hill, but he still will take home some good points in position 7 as we see our final cars coming through. Mitch Collin for the team boss of Collin Racing Team, back in the saddle of his own brand in position 8. And then we have Troy Britnell in Brits Lightning 55, seeing the highs and lows of that team as we saw Luke Stone finish in P4, Troy finishes in 9th place, and there we have Brett Allen inside the top 10. So very nice recovery drive, obviously with that one-stop strategy on those medium tyres, gets himself into the top 10. And with a competitive field like this, a top 10 is actually not a bad result here for Brett Allen. So, and some good points, a good points haul for the debuting team in Wicked Awesome Racing. Then we have Matthew Hatton for Juiced Motorsports, the second of the Juiced Motorsports, that bright fluorescent red and orange on his car. And then we have Chris Patajek rounding up the rear of 12 cars. Unfortunately, we saw that massive crash from Dean Vanderset in the CP Motorsports. We've been told that he is okay. He's not been, he hasn't been through the concussion. He hasn't got any concussion or no injuries, so sustained in that crash. So he's good, and he's going to be joining us again for round 2 next time out of Spa. But here is our official race results. We didn't see him cross the line, but we do know a familiar face up at that top step. Andrew Scott takes his car, 787, and the Mead Cougar driver development back to the top step, just leaving it where we left off last time out in season 2 on that top step of the podium. Matthew Joinson, after a brilliant last lap defense on Lewis Atkinson, takes P2, and Atkinson rounds up the top 3. But gentlemen, that last lap, I mean, we still have to send our full apologies for not getting Andrew Scott crossing the finish line. But how can we take our eyes off? How can we not take our eyes off that battle for P2? My goodness, that's what we love about TCR racing, ladies and gentlemen. The closeness that we can have in these races, and the perfect battles that we see. You know, the underdog over against a legend driver in Lewis. Matthew Joinson gets one up for the small guys.
Exactly, yeah. Fantastic racing out there for round 1, Lobby 1, and of course we do have Lobby 2 coming up for your viewing pleasure as well, so stay very much tuned onto the YouTube broadcast here today, because we have got more results here on your screen right now. P8 all the way down to the final position of P14, a DNF there, of course, for Dean van der Zandt. We wish him well on his recovery, and hopefully he will not have a similar issue next time out. Lots of questions going to be asked down the pit lane from all the team owners and their drivers, all going to be analysing the results of today's opening round in Lobby 1. And we'll switch to Lobby 2 in just a moment, and we're going to go on a quick 5-minute break. So we'll be back in 5 minutes, but stay tuned. We'll be right back for Lobby 2 coverage. Alrighty, and welcome back, everyone. We're back from our short break there between Lobby 1 and Lobby 2 as we get the cars switched up. All the team owners and engineers get themselves ready to go on the pit lane. Qualifying is going on right now. We'll have the results up in just a moment because the timer has just clocked over, and we're excited now. That was a Lobby 1 that was extremely exciting. Lots and lots of great racing around the grid there for the opening round of Season 3. Lobby 1 now got a lot of high expectations for what we see for the remainder of the season. But we are going to get into Lobby 2 qualifying and then the race in just a moment. So let's bring up our qualifying results for Lobby 2. And Nick, please take us away.
Oh, here we go. So we've got some brand new teams here. So I feel like Lobby 2 is going to be the lobby of the new boys coming to play here at Trak Racer TCR Cup. Obviously, we have the man that has taken pole position, Steph Franson for Street to Track, a small little upcoming league that races Mondays through to Sundays, 7 days a week of league racing. So if you feel like you want to jump in, have some fun, they take road cars and turn them into race cars in their lobbies. So that's a great organization they have going through. They've actually fielded a team for the first time and representing their brand. So Steph Franson is a brand new name here at MotorMotion E-Series, takes pole position ahead of Mark Pacheco for PCR. So PCR Racing. So this is the one I was talking about, where we had Mark Pacheco and Jeremy Crow have abandoned themselves away from Colin Racing Team and has actually formed PCR Racing. We saw Pacheco in the off-season racing in the Sterling Parts Porsche Carrera Cup for PCR, his team, and then he also had a driver in Boris Blazenik racing in that Porsche in that first division. But now they've expanded and they've he's brought his own team, finally his own team into PCR, into Trak Racer TCR Cup, and lines up at a very handy position 2. Then in position 3, we have Matt Darren D in for Hassel 1 Motorsports, a great familiar name in the Hassel 1 automotive team, coming back into the MotorMotion E-Series campaign. And then we have Nick Pfaff for Aster Racing. What was once before Scarborough Motorsport has gone for a whole new entire rebranding, and they've turned themselves into Aster Racing. So watch out for that striking livery with the Aster sponsoring right slap bang on the side of that car. So Nick Pfaff, the lead driver of Aster Racing, in 4th place. And then we have Jeremy Crow. It does say Colin Racing. And then obviously we don't want to talk about bias here, but we have Shannon Jones for Kung Fu Racing, and our very own George Cooke has brought this team along in Kung Fu Racing. So once we wrap up the end of this stream and once we wrap up the end of this results, and once he's got everything all sorted out, we can have a little chat with him. But then it is Scott Taylor, the man that is taking back the keys for Gridline Racing down in 7th place. So our top 7 are very nicely spread out there. And then in position 8, another Street to Track driver in Jason Oswald in position 8, rounding up the fourth position on that grid. The 4th row of that grid. Then we have Tony Griffin for Mad Turtle Racing, a veteran in this MotorMotion E-Series. Tony Griffin, and a veteran wherever he drives, he always loves. You can't take that guy. You can't take the 64-year-old off that sim rig, and you can't take him off it pretty much. He's stuck to it literally with super glue on him. You can't get him off his race chair. But in position 9 for Mad Turtle Racing, Colin Fee for the rounding up the top 10 for Kung Fu Racing. And then we have the legend that is Mark Hasseldine and for Hassel 1 Automotive Motorsport in 11th place. Andrew Encht in Mad Turtle Racing in position 12. Then we have Michael Daly for Gridline Racing in 13th, and then Dylan Scarborough, the man that has changed his branding from Scarborough Motorsport to Aster Racing, rounding up the top 14th and last place here. So before we get to the race, obviously we want to address the elephant in the room, and obviously we want to talk to our good commentator in George Cooke here, who's actually brought along his racing team. So what made you interested in bringing your team in MotorMotion E-Series for the first time?
Well, as some of you may know, I do a little bit of streaming on my Twitch channel, and the handle there is Crazy Good Kung Fu, which is about hard work over a time to achieve skill, not about the martial arts, not about pandas and different formats of Kung Fu. In fact, it's about hard work. And so it evolved out of that, really, and I had a number of people in my community that were very keen to get involved in some league racing, tried to run some stuff on my own on my Twitch channel, but didn't enjoy the race administration side of being involved in the league. So I thought, well, there's a whole bunch of great leagues out there, one of which I've done some commentary for, and that just happens to be MotorMotion. So I thought to myself, I've got to get some of my drivers involved in that because the quality of racing in this league is excellent, and I know that my drivers and community are going to have a lot of fun here. So it was a no-brain decision whatsoever to bring Kung Fu Racing in to the fold here for TCR, and we're hoping, of course, to get our race charter agreement all sorted and get ourselves up into that GD3 championship as well, but we shall see. But thank you very much for asking, and I'm looking forward to seeing how my drivers and the rest of the grid and all the other teams are going to do out here. But yeah, disclaimer, there's going to be a little bit of bias involved with this. I'm very proud of the guys so far. We're not out there to win races at the moment. We're out there to find a bit of fun and be respectful out on track. So that's how things are going to go down with Kung Fu
I'll tell you
Racing.
what. I'll tell you, if I hear any bias in this commentary booth, I've got a jar here. You're gonna pop some money in there, and Andrew and I, we're gonna go to the local pub down in Kent, and we're gonna be using that money. So any bias from you, thank you very much. That's the pint of dark beer for us.
Very good. Well, we do, of course, have our funds from Andrew Scott as well, and the Me Cougar Driver Development bias as well, and that's what gets us burgers and beers up here in the commentary box after the stints in the commentary box. So yeah, we're all going to be nice and well fed and with a few nice beers on our hands as well. We're looking forward to that very much. Nonetheless, it is time for us to kick off Lobby 2. We've seen what the qualifying results are. Steph Franson leads us away from Mark Pacheco, so the top two will be fighting it out on the grid, and it's going to be very, very exciting. So I think it is now time to jump out on track and get Lobby 2 underway. Let's jump out there right now. Here we go. It's 3 lights, it's 4 lights, it's 5 lights, and the lights will go out. Lobby 2 begins now for the first round of Season 3. Brands Hatch once again, 31 laps here. A little bit of a good move there. In the background, we've got the Kung Fu Racing car already trying to make moves. Mark Pacheco gets a good one away. Steph Franson as well, already a brilliant launch, and he'll be ahead going into Druids. A little bit of a look there from Mark Pacheco. Matt GD5 is also in there as well, and then it is Jeremy Crow and then Nick Pfaff as well in P5, Shannon Jones in P6, and then Scott Taylor jumping up into P7. Through we go of Graham's Hill, bending up towards 30s and onto the back straight of Pilgrim's Drop for the very first time. We will be going to shortly. Looks like the grid has mostly sorted itself out. No incidents so far in this race, and single file we go now up and down the hill of Pilgrims towards Hawthorne Hill, and a little bit of a move maybe here. Jeremy Crow looking right on the back of the car ahead, 251 there for Denode, and then we've got Pfaff in behind them. So great start here, 2 apiece in this battle right now for P3.
Absolutely, a great start there by the PCR boys. As we can see, Jeremy Crow looking for an inside move. Wow, what a great move, but they both run wide, so contact made. Oh, that was not going to what I thought was going to be a very strong, ambitious move there for Jeremy Crow. Unfortunately, it runs the car very wide. That natural understeer of these Mazda 3s, very heavy at the front there, as we saw in that first lobby, very heavy at the front, produces a lot of understeer. And unfortunately there for Birdman, drops well down the order down outside the top 10, unfortunately for him, and for the guy like Matt Derrendy for Hasselwan Automotive in that beautiful Jim Beam Honey Liquor livery down in 6th place. He must have got himself a little bit of damage. We'll come to our pit lane reporter very shortly there, but a couple of winners there that we've seen up at the front there. We see Nick Pfaff for Aston Motorsports riding up into position 3, so doing a very nice job there. And then position 4, obviously you'll have to let me know, George, if I believe that is Shannon Jones in position 4, is that right?
It certainly is, and
there we
start
go.
there for him up from P6, so I'm very happy to see that, of course, and there's $1 into the jar.
And then we've got Scott Taylor in 5th place. And then, yeah, as we saw there, that huge incident that we saw with Jeremy Crow, it looked to be a very ambitious move there, but he tried it, but unfortunately there on cold tyres, it is not possible. And then as we see there, for the battle for 6th place, we have Jeremy Oswald, who's actually gained a few positions from 8th place. So he's down, he's still in P7. Oh, he's moved up to position 7, but with the damage that is sustained on Darren D's car, he's looking to capitalise and try and get himself a couple of positions. As we introduce our pit lane reporter in Andrew Scott for the second time round. Andrew, what can you tell us about that opening lap kerfuffle that we saw?
Yeah, there was a coming together, and it was involving a car with medium tyres and a car with soft tyres, so I think that had something to do with it. But unfortunately,
Okay.
both cars have come out of it with damage. And Matt there in P6 has got front aero and front suspension. And down there, all the way down in 11th now is Jeremy Crow, who's got front and rear damage. So he's going to
Oh
have to
no.
kit, I think, sometime soon.
And that's the big risk that you take going through Sheen Curve side by side in turn 7. It is doable, but you really need to make sure you have that car right alongside that driver's side's on that driver's side's right hand of that car. So it's very unfortunate for Jeremy Crow to be down the order because it was a very strong start. Admittedly, George, going from P6 up to P4 potentially was P4 at the time, but unfortunately, that's the risk that you take when you decide to go for ambitious moves on that opening lap.
Yeah, and ambitious it was. I mean, we talk about using 100% of the track limits. He was using about 120% as he went through Sheen there. Just carried a little bit too much speed through that apex. And then, yeah, suddenly found himself out on the grass, the accelerator on, and then the car just said, no, oh dear. That is a coming together again. So Jeremy Crow looking to go very, very fast, but he's going to be overtaken here by Andrew Ensk, who's got him in Sheen Curve. And I've had to say, that is how you do it as a Astor racing car in the background goes very, very sideways through there. So Lobby 2 using 200% of the track limits at the moment. It's really impressive racing, but it is extremely risky. 2 already with heavy damage on their cars, going to be costing them in this race quite significantly. And Jeremy Crow says, right, I've got to make an early pit stop, get this car repaired and get back out on track as soon as possible. But in the meantime, P1, P2, having none of that, just going for a nice, cool, calm and collected race out the front. Franson is leading us away at the moment with Mark Pacheco in the 773 car, and not too far behind him either.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Mark Pacheco's doing a fantastic job there. Obviously, he's got himself very comfortable in the Trak Racer TCR Cup, and we have seen over the past seasons, George, that when we saw Mark Pacheco make his debut for Bundaberg Red Racing, which was obviously Colin's team before he made that rebrand for CRT, he was very new. He was a very fresh face in MotorMotion E Series, and as the years go on and as the development of this series moves on, projects forward, and now we're going back to one make racing, he's absolutely excelling in these one make races. We saw in that Audi TT he was very strong, and we saw even in the Peugeot for Colin Racing Team last season, very, very strong, and slowly steadily improving his results there. But P2 in this opening races and got himself a good gap over Nick Pfaff in P3. I would think this is a very solid start for car 773 and full of confidence in this first round.
Yeah, too right. It's really nice to see the continued partnership between Mark Pacheco and Jeremy Crow. Of course, they were absolutely weapons together with the Peugeots and the Colin Racing Team Peugeots at the time. They're always coming up on our timing sheets, always getting a lot of camera time because they're constantly involved in great battles out there. They had a lot of excellent strategy calls out on track, as well as a number of podiums, of course, as well through Season 2. So nice to see them basically going for it on their own here. PCR Racing making their debut and really making a statement early on. But Franson for Street to Track, well, a brand new team to the league and the TCR Cup, and they'll be looking to get their RCA, of course, to maybe continue their racing through into the GT3 Championship, which we may be running later on in 2024. P1 and holding on to it very, very nicely right now, and to see both of them up the top, I mean, this is going to be a fascinating battle, especially as the lobbies do start to switch the teams between them to see exactly where things stack up. But Franson, yeah, P1 at the moment, took the pole position as well in qualifying, so he is looking like a strong contender. Nick Pfaff, of course, can't count that man out either. He's a familiar name to those who do race, and that is the car. Well off. It is Shannon Jones, and oh dear, it does appear the Kung Fu Racing car here has gone straight on. That looks to be like some sort of failure in the suspension or in the brakes, and I'm going to go and get some information from my race engineers. Nick, that was a disaster for me and the team, but I'm going to go get some information and let you know what's happened.
I was going to say that I hope it wasn't the same mistake that we saw with Dean Vandersen in Lobby 1, that he actually had a tyre blowout, but he hasn't. So it looks like it's just looks like a big critical mistake there, and he's slowing down. Looks like engine damage as well, potentially for Shannon Jones on his debut here at MotorMotion E Series in the broadcast of the Trak Racer TCR Cup. So unfortunate there. What I thought was a potential blowout there, but unfortunately, he kept the car going. But man, that's not confidence that he wanted up.
Yeah, so I've just heard from my engineers, unfortunately, he had a big ABS lockup. So big lock up, hit the brakes
Yeah.
too hard, and yeah, it was all she wrote. He couldn't get the brake released, and that impact apparently did basically release the brake afterwards. So was a little bit of an unforced error, but something wrong with our ABS system on the car at the moment. We'll get that looked at in the pit and see if we can get that repaired for Shannon and get him back out on track.
Wow, so obviously, Brands Hatch has taken out 2 victims so far in Lobby 2. What we saw Lobby 1 to be a relatively smooth opening stint. It's taken out 2 contenders for potentially podiums and victories in Shannon Jones for Kung Fu Racing and Jeremy Crow for PCR. So those 2 are down in 13th and 14th place. So a lot of work to do for those guys. But we are on board here with Mad Turtle Racing. God, we love our Mad Turtle Racing liveries, don't we, fellas? These guys do absolutely the absolute maximum when it comes to these liveries, and I absolutely love them, seeing them on track. And we obviously have here Andrew Ench in Mavlet 1, and Mavelins in position 11, just outside the top 10. Looks like he's got a... Oh, I thought he had a penalty. That's why I thought he looked to the inside, but he's actually going defensive. He's actually blocking from Dylan Scarborough, so the new leader of Asta Motorsports, of the rebranding of Scarborough Motorsport to Asta Motorsports, down in 12th place. So as we can see we can actually see a few familiar faces down in the pit bay access area there. We do see a couple of veterans there, and Wade Rushton, Jeff Brun, who's actually flown from America, join us here in Kent in England, and also another familiar name that we see there. That we can actually see him on our secondary cameras. We can see there Morgan Davey is actually the 2023 Elite GT3 champ. He's actually hanging around in the pit lane. So great to see some familiar names here at MotorMotion E-Series, as we saw Andrew Ench go for a full drift through Graham Hill. That was absolutely fantacular.
That was absolutely mad, you might say. I do have to second your comment there on the liveries from Mad Turtle Racing. They put a lot of detail into their liveries. There's a lot of graphics to get those symbols in the right place. And I did have the pleasure of doing some design on the Kung Fu Racing car, and I'm terrible at it. But it's nothing on the level of most of the other cars and teams out there who just put in so much work and they're so skilled, so creative. Ench going for a move, or it's a Sheen though, be careful. You've already seen ahead of you what can happen there. Dylan Scarborough does get through nicely, and then Mark Hasseldine as well having a bit of an issue, putting on his indicator for a moment too. So did not have a great run through Sheen, unfortunately. Lots of moves going on behind, and oh dear, big contact there. That's straight into the rear end is Dylan Scarborough. He's got past the Mad Turtle car as well. He's on an absolute flyer right now, is Dylan Scarborough. Hasseldine pulls over onto the inside line for Paddock Hill Bend. Don't know what's going on between these 4, and then there's the GLR car of Daly, who gets slightly touched wide as well. Absolute crazy action happening between these 4.
Wow, so the biggest winner out from that was Dylan Scarborough, all the way up to 8th place from down as low as 11th. So huge gains for the Asta team boss in position 8. So great job for him. Very great patience and just biding his time and just making those moves there. As we're going to cross to our pit lane reporter in Andrew Scott. Obviously, Andrew, what can you tell us from those back drivers from the back end of the field there? We saw with Jeremy Crow, and as well with one of the other drivers, which I've completely gone blank for, Shannon Jones. Obviously, they came into the pit lane, they fixed their cars up, they repaired their damage. I believe I saw Matt Derendy actually come into the pit lane as well. Looks like he wanted to fix up some damage. So what can you tell us from those back 3? What alternate strategies are they looking to go with? Oh, looks like we've lost our comms there with our pit lane report. So we'll come back to him. Oh, there we go. So, yep, let us go ahead.
Yeah, it looks like the race engineers for these backmarking cars are definitely getting their pencils out. They're working out some alternative options now, because obviously there were some winners and some losers out of those first few laps. Some damage was taken and some alternative strategies are needed. So it seems to be all mixed up at the moment. There's various cars on mediums, various cars started on mediums, and obviously with the damage that was inflicted, there were some cars that had to make alternate pit stops and develop alternate strategies. So it's all about to play out, guys.
Excellent.
Yeah,
We do look
absolutely.
forward to that. We're at lap 9, of course, so we're about a third of the way through, and we did see a lot of flurry of pit activity at lap 9, 10, and 11, so I do expect to see some of the cars coming in for their more standard strategy pit stops at some point soon. Of course, as we've heard from our pit lane reporter and from Nick, these last 3 on an alternative strategy now, and Jeremy Crow putting a lot of pressure now onto the back of Deneda, and he is going to be, a little bit worried because that car for Jeremy Crow looking incredibly quick, and he experienced that already through Sheen when he was overtaken by Jeremy Crow, and it's going to hope that Jeremy Crow can overtake him in maybe a different part of the circuit this time, I think.
Absolutely. So obviously these two came together from the opening lap, but they're just trying to get themselves up towards that huge battle pack that we can see there that's raging ahead. That's actually led by Dylan Scarborough. So that's all the way up for position 8. And you have to remember, these guys have already made a pit stop. So these guys are taking full advantage of it. As we can see here for the Gridline Racer, I'm trying to remember the name. It is actually Michael Daly. So Mick D79. So Michael Daly pulling through. Well, I guess that's handy because he's actually running car 79, and he's actually named Michael Daly. So Mick D, it actually makes sense. So hopefully that's an easy name to remember. But
Yeah,
as we go through with
now.
exactly, so we have our Flying Dutchman here in Steph Franson, who was the leader of this early stint of the race. He's actually dropped down to P6 behind Tony Griffin. So he's actually caught up in a little bit of dirty air here. So a little bit of traffic for the Flying Dutchman, but we have Mark Pacheco, the new leader for PCR Racing, in first place with Nick Fath in position 2. So for Mark Pacheco, from what I was seeing on that track map, as we were looking down towards the rear of the grid, he was slowly catching the Dutchman in Fathson. So he was really making a few gains here. So I wonder if Pacheco can really hold his tyres out a little bit longer, a potential overcut could happen for the man in the leader of PCR.
Yeah, based on what we saw in Lobby 1, the undercut was quite strong. So this does seem to be a sort of familiar strategy, the likes of what Matthew Joynson, Andrew Scott, and Mick Hill were sort of looking at doing, a little bit of an early one. I do feel like we're going to see Pacheco come into the pits now, and yes, I can see him on the track map. He is coming in. Might see Faf as well in. Yeah, all the other leaders now coming into the pits, and this will elevate Franson right back up into the lead of this race, and with a reasonably decent gap. Yeah, Tony Griffin ahead of him for Mad Turtle Racing, also into the pits, so that just leaves the Street to Track Racing car out the front of this now, which is going to be Oswald. So alternative strategies here for the Street to Track boys, but they are currently holding a provisional P1 and what is technically a P1. So P1 and P2 being held, of course, we will have Oswald needing the pit at some point soon. That'll put Franson right back into things. GLR Scotty, though, for Gridline Racing, I do believe he has yet to pit. Now, correct me if I'm wrong there. Faf has pitted, but I do believe GLR Scotty has yet to pit. Or am I wrong on that?
we have our man in the pit lane that saw all of the action come through. So, Anna, what can you tell us?
Now, Scotty has pit by the looks of it, so that's those track positions are valid for now.
Wow, that
so
is a switch up.
Yeah. So you're saying that Scott Taylor's actually made a few gains?
Yeah, he's been a big winner out of this. So looks like he's adopting the Cooke strategy, and he's looked after his fuel and his tyres, and he did not need to take fuel during his pit stop, and he enjoyed the benefits of that.
It does appear that Nick Pfaff has done the similar thing, because he's also jumped up ahead of Mark Pacheco, who's now sitting back in P5 in this race. So a little bit reminiscent of what we saw with Luke Stone and the others. Shall we do a little rundown now and see what the kind of compounds we're seeing out there, compounds and fuel, as we've now done our first pit stop. So as we do see the other Street to Track racing car of Oswald come into the pits now, that was expected, 37% of fuel on board for him. So let's run down from P1 and all the way down the grid. Andrew Scott, can you give us a little update, very quick update on each of their tyres and fuel and the situation that they're in?
Yeah, we've got Handsome Banana there. Sorry, I can't remember his real name, but he's made his pit stop. He's looking good, and GLR Scotty is on his coattails with similar fuel and tyres. And then who we got? Faf is right on the hammer of GLR Scotty as well. He's got a little bit more fuel, so that would explain why he lost his position to Scotty, because he took on a bit more fuel. And then we've got Matt, GT51. His tyres are looking a little bit ordinary, and he's got a lot less fuel, so he might be in trouble come the second pit stop. Tony Griffin's got fresh tyres, plenty of fuel. He's looking good to make up some positions. Birdman, his tyres are very old. He's got very little fuel because he had to make that early pit stop, I believe. So, yeah, the top runners are all pretty much, yeah, their relative positions are indicative of their chances to win the race.
Absolutely. So we'll continue to watch on board and see what's going to happen. Jeremy Crow's actually made up a lot of positions after that contact early on. So he's really driving the wheels off that car right now. Shannon Jones recovering also. Of course, both of those two have already done one pit stop. So this is an approximate correct order for the race as it is right now, despite the big issue. And of course, there will be an extra pit stop involved for many on the grid. And there's Shannon Jones coming in now as expected. So that does move Oswald back up into P8. There's Colin Fee as well, the number 52 Kung Fu racing car. He'll come up through and retain P9 in this race ahead of Shannon Jones. And then, of course, Mad Turtle Racing sitting down in now P10, followed by Dylan Scarborough, who'll jump up ahead as well. So lap 13, we've had one pit stop from everyone on the grid so far. Stephenson still, Franson, sorry, leading away for Street to Track. And what a start from them at the moment. But GLR Scotty on a slightly alternative strategy. This is where things all start to sort of come apart in terms of the tapestry of strategy out there. And the favourite thing for us is to see all these strategies come back together as they head towards their second pit stop. That was a big moment on the exit of Graham Hill Bend there for Malevolent. That is not exactly where you want to be. So Andrew Enst just really pushing that car a little bit past the limits, but Lobby 2 definitely seems to be indicative of that 120% of track limits effect, doesn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And as you were saying, like within this stint, this is the stint that we saw in Lobby 1. This is the stint where the drivers are really settling themselves into the race. Obviously, these guys have just done their first stint on the set of tyres and a full tank of fuel. So now everyone's actually gone for a lower amount of fuel put into their cars compared to what we saw at the 100% rates. So yeah, all these guys are just settling themselves in. They're just starting to feel a little bit more comfy with the car. They're just trying to explore the limits, like we've mentioned. Over 120% of the track being used, and even if they use the grass, apparently that's concrete. Apparently that's asphalt to them, and they've managed to find some, and they still have some grip. So this is absolutely unbelievable how they can keep these cars on the track and not loop them. But as I was saying, this stint is the key stint, as we saw in that Lobby 1. We saw a few key names, some big winners and some big losers in that first lobby. But the second lobby as well, the biggest winner so far, Scott Taylor in position 2. And as we see on the track map up ahead, he's got Nick Pfaff right behind him in 3rd place. But it's a huge win for the gridline veteran in Scott Taylor. And also as well, we have to give a bit of a shout out to Jeremy Crow. He is in P7. He does need to complete a pit stop, but who knows? Potentially, he might be able to get away with one more stop, obviously albeit on older tyres. But if he can resurrect this and get himself up, keep himself in that top 8 at the end of this race, I think that'll be a miraculous recovery drive there, as well for the driver in 5th place, which is Darren D in 5th place. So the Hassel 1 Motorsport driver in 5th place, and Jeremy Crow 5th and 7th at the moment. If these guys can resurrect the races after that lap 1 contact, full credit to them.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. And we've seen a lot of really good results from the Hassel 1 Motorsport team. They have a lot of potential and some really good talent within the team as well. So they just need to extract it. There's often things have not gone their way throughout a race, through unforced errors and through accidents as well. They're always very, very keen, always willing to get the elbows out and race hard and race fast. Sometimes it doesn't quite go their way, but when they do have a good result, they often have a brilliant result for their team. So we will see how they go throughout the remainder of this race. And I think we'll be queuing up an onboard full lap at some point, but I do want to call attention to the fact that we have seen a similar strategy start to evolve, and that is cool, calm, collected, save a bit of fuel, stay out of the barrier, 100% of the track limits, and really just manage the fuel. Fuel seems to be, once again, one of the big limiting factors on strategy, whereas the tires are sort of where you are at with the overtaking. And, you know, these front-wheel drive cars, they absolutely burn through the tires like crazy, especially at a track like this where there's barely any straights to deal with at all, really leaning heavily on the suspension geometry and pushing those tires deep into the tarmac, and that wears them out like absolutely mad. That's not usually the limiting factor when it comes to strategy. It's how you manage that fuel. We heard from our pit lane reporter Andrew Scott earlier on that you know, every single moment that you spend stationary. We do have a yellow flag, and that is Dened in the 251 car. And, it was very close to being a very, very dodgy moment there with Tony Griffin coming on through, but Matt there has had a big issue. So Hasselblad Motorsport, and an unforced error it does appear to be at Sheen Curve, and we talked about how dangerous that is, and he'll come into the pit stop and spend a bit of stationary time there, as little as possible, hopefully, is based on what I was just talking about before. 11% fuel on board, and Oswald will go through with Jeremy Crow also taking his second pit stop. A lot happening in a very short amount of time right there.
Oh, absolutely. You can see the battle wounds there on Jeremy Crow's car on that right hand side. Absolutely taking a full battering after the contact that was made with Denerd in 10th place. I do apologise for being saying that name wrong, but I feel like George has helped me with that pronunciation, so thank you very much for that. But it's been great. Obviously a solid stint by those guys, but if they're going to make this stop work, they have to go for a full tank of fuel. And if we can get some word on our pit lane reporter very soon, are we gonna potentially see one of these drivers go on the medium compounds and just run to the end?
Yeah, that's definitely an option. The mediums will last easily a tank of fuel, but they are pretty much a second a lap slower. So it's definitely a quandary for the race engineers to work out. For these guys that are collecting damage at this phase of the race, it's definitely not optimal, and they're going to have to come up with something creative in order to get a good result.
We did just see both of them fuel up to 100% though, so what tyres are we seeing them on at the moment?
Well, as we know, most drivers and teams are going for the softs and the two-stop strategy, whereas some of the back markers are definitely on the mediums right now, and they're going for the heavy fuel saving, as we've got one of them on hards even. We've got Matt at the back there on the hard tyres. Birdman's on mediums. He's about to gobble him up, actually, because the hards are a very interesting choice. I was not expecting to see them being used today. So Matt G on the hards, guys.
Very interesting. I was expecting to see those hard tyres. You can see there a full demonstration of why hard tyres is not the favourable compound. It runs wide through Stirling and concedes that position to Jeremy Crow on those mediums. I thought we were going to see those hard tyres, we're going to give them to the track marshal so they can create a bit of a bigger wall. Down here at Westfield, as we've seen a lot of contact made in Lobby 1 with Dean Vanderzen and the latest victim in Shannon Jones. Obviously, I thought we were going to give those tyres to the track marshal so they can reinforce that barrier, but
that's about what they're good for, yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, exactly. So that's what I thought that was the plan, but Denerd has actually said otherwise, and he's just giving it a go. So not so sure if that's the strategy, but we'll see how the race pans out for him at the end of lap 31. But as we're about to approach lap 18 of 31, let's run down through the grid. So as the drivers are settling in, slowly going to start getting themselves ready for that final pit stop sequence. We have up in first place the Flying Dutchman in Seth Franson, Handsome Banana, the Flying Dutchman. Obviously, he must be a good-looking rooster himself, so we have to maybe see a profile picture of him, just to see if that's actually true or not. But then we have Scott Taylor in position 2 for Gridline Racing, the biggest winner so far in this stint, getting himself up into P2. Nick Pfaff for Astor Racing in position 3. Mark Pacheco slowly making his way back up towards this battle pack in 4th place. He's obviously got a little bit more fuel under his belt, under his fuel tank, so he might save a little bit of time in that pit lane and will try and get himself back up to in that podium positions. Then we have Tony Griffin. Looks like he's made a few gains here, I will say, for car 62. For Tony Griffin, for Mad Turtle Racing, doing a fantastic job running in P5. And then in position 6 for Street to Track, we have Jason Oswald in S2D Goju. So the top 6 being represented by 2 Street to Track Mazda 3s. And then here we have in 7th place our very own Kung Fu racing driver. If I can grab the name up, it is going to be Colin Fee. It's going to be for car 52, running himself in position 7. And then we have Andrew Ernst for Mad Turtle Racing in position 8. So it's good to see those Mad Turtles up there. They go mad themselves. We did see Andrew going sideways at the exit of Graham Hill, so he's going full mad and full send on his Mazda 3. And then we have Dylan Scarborough down in 9th place running himself very nicely inside the top 10. He was the biggest winner in that first stint, getting Mark Daly in Michael Daly, I do apologise there, in car 79. I knew I was going to get that wrong. It was so obvious, but it's Michael Daly in P10, and then in position 11 we have Shannon Jones all in that recovery drive in position 11 for Kung Fu Racing, and then we have Mark Hasseldine, and I will say, probably one of the stunning liveries so far this season in 2024. Mark Hasseldine running in position 12, Jeremy Crow. And then at the back there, Matt Denerd in 13th and 14th place, running out our 14th field of drivers here. And yeah, as we're about to, as I was alluding to, the Flying Dutchman flying through as handsomely as he can be in lap 19 or 31. But obviously, we're going to start seeing those pit stops happening very soon. But that battle pack for position 2 is raging, and it's closing up.
Certainly is, and yeah, we've got Marco Checo really rapidly approaching the back of these two, Nick Pfaff and Gilles Scotti in P3 and P2 equivalent. I do feel like, for Denerd, it's probably one of those situations where, you've had an accident in the race. Maybe it's time for the team to gather a little bit of information, do something they haven't tried out before, whether it's a fuel thing, but the hard tyres, from our experience in season 1 and 2, they don't get taken out really at all until they become a mandatory tyre, and then of course you have to use them. So until then, most people do try and avoid the hard tyre. Yeah, exactly, you're being forced to get onto them, and then we do have some safety concerns, of course, when we have a mandatory hard tyre, because our barriers are slightly less thick. But nonetheless, we digress, because this battle is going to continue, and Gilles Scotti is on a flyer at the moment. Nick Pfaff, though, has been catching up very consistently for Asta Racing. I do believe, he's put in some really consistent times back there. 31, so a little bit abnormal for that last lap there, but he is now probably within about a second and a half or so, I'd say, to Scotty. But they're going to have to worry about Mark Pacheco, who's really starting to close up the gap. So a three-way battle right now for P2, P3, P4. But I have to admit, Franson is just running away with things, and whether it's through the strategy call or just some really excellent driving being executed by the street-to-track driver, he is really putting his foot down and getting that car where it needs to be for potentially a P1. As you alluded to just a moment ago, Nick, as well, lap 20 and 21 is where we do expect the second round of pit stops for those that haven't had accidents throughout the grid. We do have a few who've already made 2 pit stops in this race, and we might see a few go to the end as well. That could potentially switch things up with 11 laps to go in this race. And there is our first pit stop there from our leader, nonetheless. Franson does come into the pits and will be the first to execute their second pit stop of the day to get on a fresh set of tyres, put the fuel in. It was at 8% when he came in, so running it pretty close to the wire. Might have been able to scrape out one more lap, but I think he's favouring the fresher, softer tyres at this stage. And we'll, in a minute, we'll throw back over to our pit lane reporter for some more updates. I think we're going to see a flurry of pit activity here at the end of lap 21.
Yeah, absolutely. As we can see, the street-to-track boys, they're both coming to the pit lane, so it looks like a little bit of double stacking going through. But as we can see there, Stephenson has actually come out of the pit lane, so this is a perfect double stack. It's very 2019 Formula One Chinese Grand Prix-esque with the Mercedes AMG Formula One team, where they did their double stacking timing to perfection. So the street-to-track boys have done it again, and they've made that double stack work nicely. But I'm actually very interested in what's happened there with Jason Oswald. He's actually come in a lot earlier. Correct me if I'm wrong. He was one of the last drivers to come in late into that pit lane in that first stint. But he's come for a complete opposite. He's actually come in very early. So I wonder if those tyres that he was running at the beginning of that second stint wasn't working for him. So maybe the team have pressurized those tyres down. Maybe they've dropped the pressures a little bit just to give him a little bit more initial grip in the early stages. So I wonder if that was the case. Maybe the pressures were too high on his car, and that's why he wasn't gaining on Tony Griffin. So that's why I wonder if that was the case, because he came in very late in that first stint, but now he's coming very early in this second stint.
Certainly has, and yeah, it's possible that he has just decided to, he's either under-fueled or he's planned to have a low fuel amount to reduce the time that has been stationary in that first pit stop. But either way, he's out now, and he's holding solidly just outside the top 10 right now. We see a number of pit stops. Of course, Franson does come on through, so it's Gilles Scotti, Nick Pfaff, and Pacheco, the three here. Going to be interesting to see the order they come out of the pits in. Looks like Gilles Scotti is out ahead of Nick Pfaff, which is good for him. Pacheco spends a little bit more time refueling, though, in the background, background. So I get the feeling that he's running a slightly higher fuel rate than those, and that's going to be a big gap now. He's right on the rear bumper, but now he's well back, nearly a corner and a bit behind those two he was fighting with. So that could have been a lost opportunity there for Mark Pacheco, but he could work his way. Won't need a fuel saving and really throttle down the car, but he's going to have to drive so consistently for the last 9 laps to really catch back up.
I was going to say, George, I do apologise to cut you off there. I was about to say, I just saw it in the eyes of my commentary box. I was just looking down the pit lane. It was a front right that was caught. That was actually caught up on the bolts there, so they actually couldn't get that front right on. So they had to put more fuel in his car to fix that wheel nut. So spending a lot of time in that pit lane, and you can see there on the track he's lost so much time to Scott Taylor and Nick Pfaff. So he has actually spent more time in the pit lane, and the team are kicking themselves because they actually had the chance to close up on Nick Pfaff and Scott Taylor with his strategy, but unfortunately just a wheel nut that would not go on with his car on that front right has compromised him. And unfortunately that's not the loaded sided as well. So very, very strange for that tyre to be stuck and not bolted on properly. Yeah. So a lot of work to do for Mark Pacheco with 9 laps to go.
I mean, what could have been here for PCR? You know, they were right up there. They had both their drivers in a good position, and without that little issue in the pit lane there, that would have put Mark Pacheco in real spitting distance of these two and a potential podium. And I know we would have seen Jeremy Crow potentially up there as well. He was rapid on the start, tried to make a little bit of an overambitious overtake, but I get the feeling he would have been right up here fighting as well. We could have seen 2 PCR cars right up fighting for the top 3 positions. So what could have been for PCR? New team, of course. They'll go home with some learnings from today, I think, and they'll re-strategize and figure out where they went wrong. Meanwhile, we're on board with Nick Pfaff for Astor Racing. He's right on the rear of GLR Scotty for Gridline Racing, and this is going to be a close battle to the end, the battle for P2. That's a bad run for GLR Scotty. Oh dear, here comes Nick Pfaff and Astor Racing.
He's looking to go for an outside move here on the exit of turn 5. Can he hold it? Can they hold that car position? They're both going side by side. Scott Taylor still holds the advantage, and he still keeps hold of that position too. But what this battling is going to do, it's going to slowly bring in Mark Pacheco there. So very unlucky there for Pfaff to not make the move through Hawthorn, but these guys are right in the clutches here. Car 92 versus car 97 on the battle for P2, just like we saw in Lobby 1, ladies and gentlemen, where we saw Matthew Johnson fend off Lewis Atkinson, Scott Taylor fend off Nick Pfaff, who looks to be the faster driver out of the two, but they do have to keep their eyes on Mark Pacheco down in 4th place as we try to, let's see if we can go for an onboard lap here with Nick Pfaff in car 747 as he's about to line up Scott Taylor. Can he go for the move going into turn 1? No, he doesn't. He feints the move and he doesn't execute it, unfortunately. So car 92 still holding on to position 3, but we are going to take a little bit of a break here, and we're about to see this battle pack go on. So sit back, ladies and gentlemen, enjoy the sounds of car 92 in the hands of Nick Pfaff chasing down Scott Taylor in car 37.
And with now 7 laps remaining, what an onboard lap we've just had there, showing off the racecraft of both Scott Taylor and Nick Pfaff. He's going to have another opportunity now into the 25th lap we go. It's a fantastic bit of racecraft from them both, a defensive masterclass from Scotty and an offensive masterclass from Nick Pfaff. Is going to go for it. Druid, is it going to be late braking? Yes, it is, and he's going to have the run. That's it. It's all said and done. Nick Pfaff has done it.
Should have closed the door there.
Wow, what a time to be, as you said, George, what a time to go on board there. We saw all those moments there. Faf was so much superior on his front tyres, and he was really executing the maximum that he could get from his Mazda 3. We saw a couple of moments there through Westfield as he's coming up in 2 corners time. He was almost put a move there on Scott Taylor, but just thought otherwise. And, you know, that's smart play by Nick Pfaff. Obviously, he was waiting patiently. He didn't want to make the move too soon. He didn't want to do it in an unnecessary area. And he's executed that very nicely through Druids, and that's a clean move there, textbook move there by Nick Pfaff for Asta Racing. Puts it up into P2, while Scott Taylor now has to charge back and try and get back that position in back down in position 3. So 37 chasing 92. Can he get his position 2 back? We'll find out in due time. But Mark Pacheco is slowly closing that battle, is slowly closing in, not by much, but just a few tenths here and there for Mark Pacheco. Just close a lot more in these remaining 5 laps. We could see for a 3-way battle for P2, just like we saw in race 1, where we saw it come right down to the wire between Johnson and Lewis Atkinson. Could we potentially see another one of another classic here in Lobby 2?
Exactly. What a great example of clean racing and good decision making. I just have to say this, guys. I just have to have a shout out to Pfaff there. What an absolute honor it was to watch what he did there for an entire lap. He was clearly the faster car, but he displayed excellent decision making and really clean driving, and he waited to choose his opportunity to make a clean pass. So hats off.
Oh, he's run wide. Sorry, apologies there. Yeah. We saw Pfaff just run wide there. That's giving Scott Taylor another opportunity here. He's going to try to see if he can go for a move. Pfaff goes defensive. Scott Taylor's trying to get underneath that rear wing. I'm trying to contain my excitement whilst being professional here in the commentary box. It's just some great racing. If you want to enjoy this as a fan, hit that like and hit that subscribe button for MotorMotion E-Series, where we bring you season 3 of the Trak Racer TCR Cup, and we're going to bring you some brilliant action here to conclude Lobby 2 here tonight for round 1 here at Brands Hatch. Scott Taylor riding those bumps there. You can see that car bouncing, porpoising more than a Ferrari in 2022. And it's some great racing action between Pfaff and Scott Taylor for position 2. Mark Pacheco doesn't look like he's closing. He's just losing time. He's losing laps, fellas. He's just not able to close in. And I think that's going to be the end of it for Mark Pacheco. It's just going to be the battle for P2 between Nick Pfaff and Scott Taylor. As we try to see what's going on down the rest of the grid there, I don't see too many battle packs happening through the bottom of the pack there. I believe Tony Griffin looks like he's holding on to position 5 very nicely there. We can see Jason Oswald slowly closing. Maybe the lower pressure tyre pressures have actually helped him a little bit close that gap to Tony Griffin, but I don't think we're going to see anything come out of it. Jeremy Crow here running an alternate strategy. We have to remind our viewers, running the medium tyres and then put on a full tank of fuel. He might be able to get to the end here. We might cut to Ando for one last analysis on Jeremy Crow and the drivers that were down the order on that opening lap there. But if you've got any news on us, Ando, what is Birdman's tyre and fuel looking like? Can he get to the end on lap 31? Can he get himself inside that top 8?
Yeah, I think he can. I believe he is good to go till the end. So I anticipate he will make up some positions between now and the end of the race.
Bear in mind,
I don't know if he's going to make
4
it.
laps remaining, so there's a fair gap up to Oswald at the moment. He's well at the end of the Pilgrim Straight, so that probably won't eventuate. And he's got a little bit of pressure behind as well from Colin Fee for Kung Fu Racing at the moment, sitting in P8. So this is going to be a little battle towards the end for P7 and P8. And of course, Pfaff and Scotty will be going at it as well, though the gap between them is starting to evolve somewhat in the favor of Nick Pfaff. So we'll continue to keep an eye on both of those battles. There is another battle that's going on as well, slightly further down the grid, and that is going to be between Derned there and I believe this is the GLR Gridline Racing car down here, and the other person there is Michael Daly. So Daly and Derned going at it as well down the grid for P11 at the moment. Those are the 3 battles happening out on track. Franson, of course, still leading us away, and Pfaff still holding onto that P2 position. But there's Mark Pacheco. I wonder if these two have just run themselves offline enough to give him that little bit of space, but 3 laps left now, unless something major happens between these two, and that will include Scott Taylor catching up to the back of Nick Pfaff. Unless that does happen and they start fighting again, I think Mark Pacheco is going to be in a little bit of the doldrums until the end of this race, which sadly will put him into that P4 position. And I will say as well, Astor Racing are going to be absolutely stoked, not only with the racing they've seen out there from this man, Nick Pfaff, but also by the talent that he showed out there as well. So Astor Racing will be absolutely stoked that they have signed a man with such talent. Nick Pfaff, known well around the GD7 community and known for his good, clean, effective racing, and a few exclamations from us in the commentary boxes to that battle we had, because that was something special.
Oh, absolutely. So great talent there for Astor Racing in the 92. So doing a very good job there. I didn't want to comment there, George. I knew you were gonna get caught out by Mick D79 and you forgetting the name there. I said, it looks so easy. It looks easy on paper. You're thinking of it, Michael Daly, car 79, but then we just forget. That's just us in the commentary box. That's the brilliant life of being a commentator,
It is,
ladies and
and it's
gentlemen.
nice and easy. I mean, he's got his username, Mick D79. It should be fairly obvious, but we'll get there eventually. We've got 8 rounds to figure this out. Yeah, if we don't get it right on the 8th round, then something has gone dramatically wrong.
Absolutely. All it is just a nickname change, and then that just throws a spanner in the works.
Precisely, and yeah, we will see. We'll sort out some of the driver name pronunciations as well in the commentary box. But it is round 1, and everyone just gets to look at the action on track today. That's just the way of it, and it just builds up the expectation of what we're going to see for the next 7 rounds. I mean, we've got Spa-Francorchamps next week, so long lap, long pit entry, big strategy calls to be made there as well. And it's not quite the same here. You know, here we've got lots of short number of corners, short lap, short pit entry, lots of turns, and we're going to see the complete opposite at Spa next week.
Oh, absolutely. We're going to be seeing laps well into the 2-minute 30s, maybe a potential of rain going in on Tuesday night in the Broad and the MotorMotion E Series world of TCR racing. Potentially there could be some rain forecasted at Spa-Francorchamps. So we shall wait and see. But as we come down to position 7 here, it looks like Jeremy Crow's still holding off Colin Fee running up in position 8, so he's doing a really good job on those mediums, and I will give full credits to Jeremy Crow if he can hold on to this position, but Colin Fee is really closing in. Is really starting to close that gap on Jeremy Crow, just that ever so slightly, and we have the flying doing himself a really nice job. We are just starting to lose a little bit of coverage there. There we go. Apologies there on my end, ladies and gentlemen. We see Steph Franson in car 72 starting to really stretch his legs there. He's already set the fastest lap with a 1:28.7. I believe that's the fastest time we've actually seen it throughout both lobbies. I believe.
I'm trying to remember if it was a 28.6, was it maybe?
Yeah, I think it was from Rob Jacobs from Who Corp Esports. I believe he's got the fastest lap. Yeah, the fastest lap overall. So yeah, but still, I mean, regardless, he's doing a great job here, Franson. You know, in 72, he's doing a really nice job. And 28.7. If we see straight to track in lobby 1 or in that lobby where we have the big hitters, strap yourselves in, ladies and gentlemen, because I think Season 3 is going to be one of the best seasons that we have here at MotorMotion E-Series and the Trak Racer TCR Cup.
Couldn't agree more. And yeah, one make series, of course, which makes the racing nice and close, and it'll show the driver's skills off even more so than it did in the 5 make series. And this is to take nothing away from the 5 make series, because that was absolutely brilliant with all the cars, advantages and disadvantages playing out. Was absolutely fascinating for everyone to view, for the drivers to engage in, and for the teams to deliberate over, so to speak. But at this point, street to track, you come in, you're a fresh team, you're a new team. Generally you don't expect to have a good result off the bat of things, but they're in the right lobby at the right time in some ways, and we'll eventually see them go head-to-head with the big hitter teams, as Nick's just said, in later rounds, and it's going to be absolutely fascinating to see. But it's going to really throw Street to Track up there in the Team Points Championship initially, because it's going to be 2 good results off the bat in round 1 for Season 3 for them. P1 it looks like at this stage, and a P6 as well for Oswald. So not a bad start, if I might say so myself, and Ranson has really laid down the gauntlet and said, hey, you big teams at the top, watch out, we're coming for you.
Oh, absolutely. So it's a great honor to see Steph Franson. The first time I've actually seen him in MotorMotion E Series, really honing in his craft. 31 laps completed, about to be completed here as he's about to execute, as he executes Sterling for the last time, turn 8, and as he comes towards Clark Curve for the final time here on debut for Street to Track Racing It is going to be Steph Franson in the car, flashing the lights, all hell's blazing, and really fist pumping in the air for the debut of Street to Track. Welcome to MotorMotion E-Series. You're taking your first victory here, car 72. Steph Franson, your victor with Nick Pfaff in car 92. A great result here for the rebranded Scarborough Motorsport to Asta Racing, getting himself onto the podium for the first time in 2024. And then Scott Taylor, throwing a curveball in strategy there. The biggest winner, I will say, in this Lobby 2, Scott Taylor in position 3. Mark Pacheco, what could have been for PCR, holds on to P4. And then we have the silent assassin and Tony Griffin rounding up in position 5. Great work there by Mad Turtle Racing to get Tony Griffin from 9th place all the way up into 5th. So great work there, great strategy calls there by the Mad Turtle crew. And then we have Jason Oswald rounding up in position 6. So great outing for Street to Track in general. So both P1 and P6, so good haul of points for the debuting team. And Jeremy Crow holds on to position 7. So wow, a different strategy there for Jeremy Crow to get those mediums and a full tank of fuel to the end there and get himself inside that top 7 or inside that top 8. That is a huge accomplishment there for the man in car 104. And then we have Colin Fee rounding up in 8th, Andrew Ernst in 9th place, and then we have, I believe in 10th place is wheel driver Shannon Jones in position 10, and then we have Dined in 11th. Then we have Michael Daly in 12th place, Dylan Scarborough 13th, and Mark Hasseldine rounding up our rear of our 14-man lobby here, ladies and gentlemen.
Wow, what a race that was, and an impressive bit of driving from a lot of the drivers around the grid, and a lot of good recoveries as well, you've got to admit. Some really impressive stuff. Good work from the teams as well. In terms of their strategies, it seems to have worked out for some, maybe some experimental things being tried by some of the cars on the track, but really today is all about Street to Track. They have done an impressive bit of work out there with Steph Franson leading away for P1 in that first round at Brands Hatch. Nick Pfaff for Asta Racing P2, Scott Taylor for Gridline Racing in P3, a close battle between them at the end, but I completely agree. And if we were going to give a driver of the day, which we might go through in just a minute, I'd give that to Scott Taylor. What a drive from him today. Even though he nearly held onto that P2, did lose it at the end to Nick Pfaff, but nonetheless a great drive from him out there today. Mark Pacheco nearly caught back up there. First outing, of course, for the PCR team, and another good result for a debut team out there on the grid, because they got P4 and P7 Street to Track with P1 and P6 in amongst all the very experienced other teams on the grid. Troy Griffin takes P5 on the grid for Mad Turtle Racing, followed by P6 Oswald for Street to Track. Jeremy Crow in P7, looking further down the grid. Colin Fee, Kung Fu Racing, my man here. He's very proud of his drive today. We're looking for fun out on track, and I did hear from him already. He's had a great shout. He's in the top 10 for his first race on debut. Andrew Enks for Mad Turtle Racing will take home P9 and 32 points as well. Shannon Jones in P10, the P8 and P10 for us. 2 cars in the top 10 on debut. I'm very happy as a team owner. Nonetheless, I digress, because Matt Dennered is for Hassel 1 Motorsport takes P11, followed by Michael Daly for Gridline Racing. Dylan Scarborough in Asta Racing, P2 and a P13 for them. Might be some discussions in the pit lane afterwards. And then Mark Hasseldine, of course, for Hassel 1 Motorsport will take P14. No DNFs in this lobby, though. So unlike what we saw with Dean van der Zandt and that tyre popping on him and CP Motorsports earlier on, luckily we did not see that happen in the second lobby. So a good race overall, and that is going to conclude our round 1 coverage of race 1 and race 2 here. So really impressive racing across the entire grid. I do have to throw it to both yourself, Nick, and Andrew, our pit lane reporter, for any highlights and special mentions you want to make today.
Well, I think the honourable mention goes to those that actually played their fuel numbers perfectly. Obviously, we saw in Lobby 1, Andrew Scott playing that fuel number perfectly. We saw Matthew Johnson playing that perfectly. And then even here, we saw Franson doing a really good job, and Scott Taylor. So there are a few drivers that are playing the smart heads here. And, and I will have to say this as well, George. With Juice Motorsports having a very close relations with Street to Track, those two are working very well together, and they're trying to feed off their data, as well as Gridline Racing and me, Cougar Drive Development. Obviously, Andrew Scott being a former driver for Gridline Racing, obviously still got his ties there with Gridline Racing. And obviously, we have 2 teams working with each other And what we're seeing here as well in this racing, in both lobbies, we're seeing those two teams come together and producing the results that, you know, no other driver could. We saw PCR struggle at the end there with Mark Pacheco overfueling due to that due to the tire faults that we saw in the pit lane. We also saw Luke Stone in Lobby 1. You know, we thought he was going to be catching up towards Lewis Atkinson and potentially challenge for the podium. He finished down in P5. So I think what it has to come down to, if it comes down to my final analysis, work together. I think working together, finding a team that you can work with, and really come up with some interesting strategies. That's what's going to win you. That's what's going to win you a TCR race here at MotorMotion.
Absolutely. And over to our pit lane reporter, Andrew Scott. Well, you saw it right on the edge there, of course, reporting from the pit lane. And I'm sure you've been enjoying your beers, but you saw a lot of the cars coming in and out today as well. So give us some thoughts from the two races we've seen today at Brands Hatch.
Yeah, my driver of the day, I think, goes to Faf 747. He made it all work for him, and he made that pass on track on Scotty. So he got into P2 with pure driving skill, and he got the strategy perfect as well. So he gets my vote for driver of the day. And yeah, I think this is going to be a thinking man series, guys. This is going to require a little bit of pre-thought and preparation and strategy development in order to get the results. There's been a few drivers today that on outright pace clearly a cut above, but they didn't get the result that they were hoping for. So I think this is going to come down to a bit of thinking and pre-thought and planning. And this series has really got me excited.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
that just kind of goes. It just goes back to like the point I was saying, that if you link with a team, you might be able to work together and maybe get yourself some great results, like we saw with Juiced and Juiced Motorsports Street to Track. Your team and me, Cougar Driver Development and Gridline Racing. You know, 4 teams that have played out the strategies to perfection. And we're just seeing that at the end of the race results, both picking up podiums. So, you know, hats off to them, and great results. But before we end our broadcast, I'll give my drivers of the day. So for Lobby 1, I know this man has been begging for a driver of the day in Season 2 and even in Season 1. And I never gave it to him because I was looking down the order thinking, oh, there might be a standout here. But I think for Lobby 1, my driver of the day is going to go to Andrew Scott, playing the fuel cards to perfection, playing the strategy well to his advantage, and really running a solid race for himself, for me, Cougar Drive Development team, and trying to defend that team's championship. And for Lobby 2, I will agree with Andrew Scott. I'm going to give it to Nick Pfaff. That's some pure hard racing there, and some great viewing there of the onboard lap that we saw with him. Really planning that move on Scott Taylor. Took it to his advantage down at Druids, made the move stick, and ran away with P2.
Absolutely, and I guess that leaves just me for driver of the day, and I've got 2 gold coins sitting right here, my drivers of the day, going to my team, Shannon Jones and Colin Fee. Well done on a good outing there, but in all seriousness, no, I think Nick Pfaff has done incredibly well here today in Lobby 2, and yeah, Andrew Scott with the early incident that put him behind in P5 executed the strategy really, really well, so I have to agree with those drivers of the day here today. It's been a fantastic drive from a lot out on grid. Those 2 would definitely stand out, so I think an honourable mention for me will go to Scott Taylor for that drive that he did there. Did some really respectful defensive driving as well against Nick Pfaff, who was just going lightning quick out on track. So really impressive work by him today as well for Gridline Racing. So now we do look ahead to the next round, because in a week's time we are back on the broadcast here today. We'll be today when we do the next broadcast, of course. Round 2 at Spa in Belgium, 19 laps over there in the early morning on the 28th of May. So that's when the race will happen. We'll have our delayed broadcast a little bit later on. So next week, definitely tune in, and we will be showing you some more fantastic racing as we head into the continued part, pretty much the halfway point as well of our European leg of Season 3. But it has been a good race today, and thank you all for joining us in chat over on YouTube. You are watching the MotorMotion E-Series here on YouTube. If you've enjoyed today's racing, please give us a like and a subscribe. Hit those notifications buttons as well, because it does tell you when we go live. And of course, go and check us out on www.motormotioneseries.wordpress.com. Lots of upcoming races here on the Gran Turismo 7 platform, and of course we run all our comms through Facebook as well, so please go and check us out on there as well. I want to say a big thanks to the race admins Simmons and the race directors in the background for the Trak Racer TCR Cup doing a fantastic job as always. And a big thank you to both our pit lane reporter and Andrew Scott and Nick Pautasso for their work here today. And we look forward to continuing with the burgers and beers and the banter here in the commentary box for the remainder of the 7 races ahead of us. And that's going to be it for us in our coverage here today. So a big thank you to you all. We're going to leave it there. Take care, stay safe out there, and we will, of course, see you next time. Good evening, good night, and goodbye.